insurance policy on a chief of police's salary.
I did, huh? And who did I name as beneficiary?
Your beautiful wife. Who else?
So?
So, 3 days ago, you were shot to death.
I had a feeling it wasn't going to last.
And 24 hours later, your wife files a claim on the policy.
My friends tried to warn me she was fast.
Well, there's the setup. What do you think?
The same thing you probably do.
In that case, you got just 56 minutes to catch the plane. The town is Greensport, Missouri. And watch yourself.
What do you mean?
From what I hear, Johnny, it's a wide open town.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Home Office, Great Plains Guarantee Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Open Town matter. Item 1, $84.60, transportation and incidentals, Hartford to Greensport, and taxi to the Townhouse Hotel. I was hoping for a chance to shower and change, look around long enough to get my bearings, and then edge into the case gradually. But it didn't work out that way. The case was already there and waiting for me right in the lobby of the hotel. All dressed up in a shiny black suit, squeaky black shoes, and a neater-than-neat little black bow tie.
Oh, am I glad to see you, Mr. Dollar.
Are you?
Oh, indeedy, yes, I am. I just breathed a great big sigh. Relief, you know, when I heard you tell the clerk your name. That's how I know you're you, you know.
You mean there's been some doubt?
But of course you'll want to know I'm me, so... Well, I'll swear I had a card in one of these pockets.
Well, maybe you could just tell me who you are, Mr.
Potzer, Averill P. Potzer. I ought to have a card, though, to make it more official.
Oh, never mind. I believe you.
I must have given them all away. Don't worry, though. I'll get some more printed and see that you have one before you leave.
Well, thanks a lot, Mr. Potzer. And now if you'll
wait, Mr. Dollar. You want to talk to me, of course.
Will I?
Yes, I'm the agent here for the Great Plains Guarantee Company. I'm the one that sold that policy to the fellow that's dead.
Oh, so that's it.
Of course. He wasn't dead then, you understand.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
Feeling pretty lively, as a matter of fact, what with the new young wife and all that.
I imagine so, but now just...
Mr. Dollar, you've got to do something about that woman.
Oh?
Oh, she's driving me crazy. She wants her money, she says, $50,000, and she seems to think I'm carrying it around in my pocket.
She's, kind of anxious, huh?
I'll tell you how anxious. Chief Blake was shot about 2 in the morning, and at 3 that afternoon, Marty, that's Mrs. Blake, was down at my office after a claim form.
Yeah, I understand it was sent airmail special delivery.
Well, she insisted on it. Made me take it straight to the post office as soon as she'd signed it.
Pretty cold-blooded about it, huh?
Well, I've heard Marty Blake called a lot of different things in this town at different times, but never cold-blooded. You follow me?
I think I'm ahead of you.
You'll know what I mean, all right, when you meet her.
I can hardly wait.
Man, oh man, wow.
Item 2, $1.15, taxi to the suburban home of Edgar Blake, former chief of police of Greensport, now deceased. On the strength of Potzer's description of the widow, I added a shave to the shower and change, and I hoped I looked a little fresher than I felt. The house was a rambling 2-story job set back from the street. Well-kept shrubbery, nice lawn, quiet neighborhood, and plenty expensive. I wondered how Blake had been able to afford it. I was halfway up the walk when a man came out the front door. He wavered down the steps, then stopped and waited for me, rocking slightly on his heels.
A copper. I can tell him a block away. You're a copper, right?
Wrong.
Private eye, maybe?
No, insurance investigator.
Insurance. That's what I just asked her about. And you know what she did?
Oh, threw you out, probably.
Right. Said I was drunk.
Oh, ridiculous.
That's exactly what I said. Ridiculous, I told her. Ridiculous. But you know something? She was right, I am.
No, I can hardly believe it.
It's a fact, though. At least a little bit. My name's Crayley, Joe Crayley. I'm a reporter. Greensport Daily Herald.
Johnny Dollar. Hiya, Joe.
Insurance, huh? And he did have some, or you wouldn't have had any reason to be here. She was lying.
No comment.
Who's a beneficiary?
Still no comment.
It's her, of course. Little smarty Marty, his ever-loving little wife. How much is she going to make on the deal?
Sorry, Joe.
No comments. All right, let her lay. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Tell me something, Joe. Suppose I want a little action. Want to get into a poker game while I'm here. Find a crap table, maybe. Any idea where I could go?
Sure. Anyone a half a dozen different... How long you been in town, Johnny?
About an hour.
You wised up pretty fast, didn't you?
I didn't know it was a secret. The town is wide open, isn't it?
It is. But I wouldn't go around poking into things if I were you. A guy could get hurt, you see what I mean?
Maybe a guy did get hurt.
Blake, you mean? What makes you think so?
Well, if somebody wanted to keep the rackets going, the police chief would be a natural target, wouldn't he?
Not necessarily.
Meaning?
No comment.
What was Blake's salary, Joe?
$6,000 a year.
On $6,000, he was living in a house like this?
Wait till you see Marty. She's even more expensive.
So that's why Greensport is wide open. The police chief was in.
No comment.
Well, he's out now, that's for sure. Joe, I'll probably be talking to you later, so...
Yeah, do that. Just ask anybody. Joe Craley, the alcoholic that works for the Herald. I'm always around somewhere.
Well, how do you do?
Mrs. Blake?
Yes, what can I do?
Johnny Dollar. I'm representing the insurance company.
Oh, come in, Mr. Dollar.
Thank you.
Come this way. I'm a little surprised, really. I hardly expected them to pay off so promptly.
Well, in that case, you won't be too disappointed.
Disappointed? What do you mean?
I mean, I didn't come here to pay you anything.
Then why did you come?
I'm a special investigator, Mrs. Blake.
What does that mean?
The company would like a little more information about your husband's death.
I told them all about it in the claim I sent to them.
I know, but sometimes it's necessary.
So that's the pitch. They're trying to squirm out of it.
Why do you say that?
Because they sent you here, that's why. And because they always do. I know how those companies operate.
Oh, you've had experience with them before.
No, I haven't. But I'm a real smart girl, Mr. Dollar. And I know a fast shuffle when I see it coming.
And a smart girl ought to know better than to yell before she's hurt.
Why else would they send out a special investigator?
I told you why. They want some more information.
What information? What is it they want to know?
The details, that's all. Exactly how your husband was killed.
I told them all that in the claim.
I know,
He
but
was
look-
shot to death with his own gun right here in his own house.
Do you mind showing me how it happened?
Oh, for the love.
Now, look, there won't be any payment until I file my report, Mrs. Blake.
All right. You win. When you go after something, you really go after it, don't you?
Well, that's what I get paid for.
Oh. And what about something you personally wanted?
Well, that would depend on how bad I wanted it.
I see. Would you like a drink?
No, thanks.
You won't mind if I have one.
Right ahead.
Looking at you.
Right. Now, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I know. Stick to business. All right, come on. Happened over here by the stairway.
I see.
Right here. This is where he fell. This is where he died. His gun was lying on the floor beside him.
Middle of the night, wasn't it?
About 2 a.m, we'd been asleep.
Why did he come downstairs?
I heard a noise of some kind. It woke me up. I shook Ed and told him about it, and he came down to see what it was.
He was armed?
No. His gun was there on the hall table by the front door.
Is that where he usually left it?
Yes. Whenever he came home, he always took it off and put it there on the table.
Then anyone who knew him would probably know they could find it there.
Yes, I suppose so.
All right. So, what happened?
Well, like I said, Ed went on downstairs, and I walked out of the bedroom into the hall.
Were there any lights on?
Not down here. I turned on the hall light upstairs.
Did you hear your husband say anything?
No, all I heard was the shots, 4 or 5 of them. Then I heard someone run out the front door.
And what did you do?
I called out to Ed, but he didn't answer. Then I ran downstairs and found him lying here, dead.
Did you get a look at the prowler, or whoever it was?
No, it was too dark. And he ran out as soon as he fired the shots.
How did he get into the house?
The detective said he forced the lock on the front door. I guess that was the sound that woke me up.
And then he used a gun that was inside the house that he may or may not have known was inside the house.
That's what the police figure.
All right. What do you figure, Mrs. Blake?
The same thing, I guess. I don't know any more about it than they do.
I thought you might have some theory of your own.
I'll string along with them.
Uh-huh. Just an accidental prowler who got panicky and snatched up a gun that happened to be lying around handy.
I guess that's about it.
Any idea at all who the prowler might have been?
Of course not.
Do you suppose it could have been somebody besides a prowler? Somebody who came here for the express purpose of murdering your husband?
Ed had a lot of enemies, of course, because of his job. But
What about his friends, Mrs. Blake?
what do you mean?
Do you suppose one of his friends could have done it?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I've been admiring your watch. Real nice. Set in diamonds, emerald band. Must be worth around $2,000. Very nice.
Well, thank you.
And this
but-
house, the furniture, that car out there in the driveway. On a police chief's salary, Mrs. Blake.
I wouldn't know anything about Ed's financial affairs.
Who runs the rackets here in Greensport?
What rackets, Mr. Dollar?
Was your husband in on them?
Sure you won't have that drink?
All right, Mrs. Blake, play it your way.
I thought the insurance company was probably convinced that I was the one who killed him.
They're not convinced of anything yet.
But they think I did it, don't they?
No, but they think 24 hours is pretty fast for a grief-stricken widow to shoot a claim into the office.
I am not grief-stricken, Mr. Dollar.
So I've noticed.
Do I have to be? Is there some clause in the policy?
No, you don't have to be.
You think I did it, don't you?
I think there's a strong chance you did.
Then I think you need a little straightening out.
I'm listening.
Why should I make it easy for you? Go see Dave Sherman. Talk to him.
Dave Sherman?
The city attorney. See what he says before you get all lathered up. See if he thinks I'm guilty.
All right, I will.
And then we'll talk. And if you're nice enough to me, maybe I'll even cooperate. You never know. Do you?
Now, here's our star to tell you about tomorrow's episode of this week's story.
Before I do that, please let me say thanks to all of you who are so kind about writing and telling us how much you like Johnny Dollar. It's very gratifying encouragement to all of us who are involved in production of the program, and we appreciate your letters more than you know. As always, I'll try to answer you promptly, but sometimes the mail does pile up. In any event, thanks. Thanks very much for writing. Tomorrow, a smash in the teeth opens things up, and an airtight alibi gets air-conditioned with bullets. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
This is ChestertonRadio.com.
From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
This is Dave Sherman, Mr. Dollar, city attorney.
Oh, yes, I've been trying to reach you, Mr. Sherman.
Yes, so my office tells me. It's the Ed Blake case, I suppose.
That's right.
Well, I've already told my secretary to make all the records available.
It's not
till
the
you're in
records I'm mainly interested in, Mr. Sherman. I want to talk to you personally.
there. Oh, why?
Because I've been informed that you're able to furnish an alibi for my number one suspect.
Marty Blake, huh?
That's right.
Who informed you, Mr. Dollar?
Marty Blake.
Oh, the lovely widow herself.
Right.
Well, I guess we'd better have a talk.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yes, if you're dead set on lighting a fuse in this town, I may as well give you some matches. Come on over to the courthouse.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, location Greensport, Missouri, to the Home Office, Great Plains Guarantee Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Open Town Matter. Expense account continued. Items 5 and 6, 70 cents. A copy of the Greensport Daily Herald and a taxi fare to City Hall. I opened the paper and glanced over the headlines. Murder of police chief still unsolved. City Attorney's Office claims new evidence. Mayor Lyons demands action. I could feel for the mayor. My client stood to lose $50,000, life insurance payable to the dead police chief's widow, Marty Blake. So I wanted action, too. And I was hoping to get it from City Attorney Dave Sherman.
Come in, Mr. Dollar. I'll have a seat.
Thanks.
When did you get in town?
Early this afternoon.
And you've already met Marty Blake. Well, that figures.
Yes, it does, under the circumstances. Her husband has been killed. He carried $50,000 worth of insurance with my company. And Mrs. Blake filed her claim less than 24 hours after his death.
So that's why you hot-footed it out here from Hartford, huh?
Well, the company figured 24 hours was pretty fast action for a grief-stricken widow.
No. I don't imagine Marty is grieving too much.
No, she's not. She told me that herself.
Marty's about 26 or 7. Ed Blake was in his 50s.
Uh-huh. Money, maybe?
Well, not until he met her. Then he started to make it. Fast. He had to. That's how Marty likes things. Fast.
And then he married her.
Well, then she married him. And now, 8 months later, she's a widow. With an insurance claim for $50,000.
Well, she said she liked things fast.
Why, I know what you're thinking, Mr. Dollar, but you may as well back up and start all over. You're off on the wrong foot.
Oh, how do you mean?
This killing? Oh, sure, it worked out perfect for her, made to order. A man could build a pretty good case against her, especially with that 24-hour insurance claim. Yes, that would really cinch it with a jury.
I pointed that out to her.
Well, I figured as much. Would you mind telling me what happened?
Well, her first move was to start turning on the charm.
Well, that's one of the easiest things she does, if she thinks it might pay off. And after all, with $50,000 in the offing...
Sure.
Did she give you any of the details of the night it happened?
It bored her to death to even talk about him.
Uh-huh. And you thought she was putting on an act to maybe throw you off?
What would you think?
Oh, she wasn't, Mr. Dollar, any more than she was sorry that Ed Blake was murdered.
Then she's pretty cold-blooded.
Well, that's a moot question. Figuratively, yes, I suppose she is. See, she used to be a dancer. Never good enough to make the big time, so she had to, live by her wits and her charm. But you pointed out things that could look pretty black for her if the case ever got to court.
That's right.
Huh? What happened?
She sent me to you.
Why? So I could tell you she didn't kill him.
Well, it adds up, Mr. Sherman.
Yeah, I know.
It was late at night, the two of them alone in the house. Her husband shot to death with his own gun.
I know, Mr. Dollar, but not by her.
Why not? That story about the mysterious prowler has been used before, over and over. Matter of fact, I broke one of them not 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm. But in this case, it's true.
How do you know?
Because you were wrong on one point. They weren't alone in the house.
Well, what do you mean? Who else was there?
I was.
Oh, I see.
She's as pure as the driven snow. Well, at least so far as Blake's murder is concerned.
Yeah, kind of a neat setup, isn't it?
Huh?
Instead of prosecuting attorney, you're the star witness for the defense.
Yes, I suppose if it came to that, I'd have to be. I was there when it happened.
So that's why she sent me to you, so I could hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
That's about it.
Well, she couldn't have a much better alibi than the city attorney himself.
Thank you. Oh, she's in the clear, Mr. Dollar.
How did you happen to be there at 2 o'clock in the morning?
I was spending the night. Ed and I were planning to leave early on a fishing trip.
Oh, I see. Like to tell me all about it?
Certainly. We'd all gone to bed around midnight. It was a few minutes before 2 I woke up. I heard Marty and Ed out in the hall just outside my room. I opened my door, and just then Marty snapped on the hall lights. A second later, the shots blasted downstairs, 5 quick ones.
Where was she standing at the time?
By the door of her room, not 10 feet away from me. So you see, Mr. Dollar, she couldn't have done it.
So, that's that. She can thank her lucky stars you were there.
Oh, Marty's always been lucky.
Have you known her a long time?
3 or 4 years. Ever since she came here to Greensport.
You and Blake were pretty good friends, I suppose, huh?
No, as a matter of fact, we didn't have too much use for each other.
Oh?
Oh, I know it doesn't make sense, going fishing together and spending the night in his home, but... Well, I know what you're thinking, Mr. Dollar.
Do you?
Yes, you're thinking maybe I need an alibi as much as Marty does.
Well, it is that kind of an alibi. It works equally well for either of you two.
Yeah, only I don't need an alibi. Blake and I had our little differences, that's true, but they weren't serious enough to be a motive for killing him.
Maybe Marty herself could be a motive.
In what way?
How old are you, Mr. Sherman?
33. Why?
And Marty Blake is 27. And a beautiful girl. Her husband was around 52, I believe.
Wrong guess again, Mr. Dollar. I've known her too long, and what's more important, I know her too well.
Meaning?
Well, sure, she's a knockout. I was nuts about her once. She's a summer night, wild honeysuckle and a handful of stars, but there's one great big catch to it.
And that is?
She's got a built-in jukebox hidden way inside of her, and when you put in money, it plays real pretty music. When you don't, nothing. Ed Blake found out.
And still went on putting in money?
He liked the music.
Then that's why he got mixed up in the rackets.
Police chief's salary was... Well, Mr. Dollar, you do get around, don't you?
Was Blake running them or just taking orders?
Now, what makes you think there are any rackets here?
Maybe it was just a guess.
Oh, who told you about them?
It's funny, I can't seem to remember at the moment.
I just bet you can't.
Suppose you answer my question, Mr. Sherman. Who's behind the rackets here in Greensport?
Just a minute.
Who did Blake get his orders from? Or was he the one who gave the orders?
Wait a minute, Mr. Dollar. Just take it easy.
Dave, I wonder if you'd mind going over that report on... Oh, sorry, I didn't know you had...
No, that's all right, Will. Come on in. This is Johnny Dollar. Mr. Dollar, it's Mayor Lyons.
Mr. Dollar?
Mr. Dollar's an insurance investigator, Will. He's here to look into Ed Blake's death.
Terrible tragedy, Mr. Dollar. We'll appreciate all the help you can give us.
Well, so far, Mayor, I'm afraid that doesn't amount to very much. The only theory I had just blew up in my face.
Oh? What was this theory?
Well, Mr. Dollar suspected Marty Blake of the killing.
Well, Dave, didn't you tell him that you...
Yes, he told me, Mayor. That's when it blew up in my face.
Well, at various times in the past, Mrs. Blake might have been, as one might say, a bit indiscreet. But to consider her capable of cold-blooded murder is utterly unthinkable, sir.
Particularly when she was standing just 10 feet away from the city attorney at the time.
Well, yes, that's true, of course.
Just what is the official theory on the shooting, gentlemen?
Well, at the moment, I'm afraid we haven't any.
I'll tell you, Mr. Dollar. When we find Shorty Wells, we'll have the killer.
Shorty Wells?
A local hoodlum. Blake got him sent up the river a couple of years ago, and Shorty swore that he'd get Blake for it if it was the last thing that he ever did.
Oh, well, now that's a fairly common threat, though, for a criminal to make.
Yeah, and usually it's nothing but talk. But Shorty was paroled just last week, Mr. Dollar. He was seen around town the morning before the killing, and we haven't been able to locate him since.
I see.
Wells did it all right. There's not the least doubt in the world.
Yeah, it seems to add up, doesn't it?
Yes, and we've got every available man on the lookout for him, but so far no luck. There's not even a trace of him.
Tell me something, Mayor. Would Marty Blake know anything about the rackets her husband was tied in with?
Rackets? Why, that's the most preposterous thing I...
Well, it's no use. Mr. Dollar's been talking to somebody, and he's found out that our little city isn't as lily-white as we'd like to pretend.
Indeed.
It's true, isn't it, Mayor? As I hear it, Greensport is a wide-open town.
May as well admit it, Will. He knows it already. There's no point in trying to lie about it.
All right. It's true, Mr. Dollar. But it's not wide open, as you put it. But there are rackets, as unpleasant as it may be to admit it.
Do you have any idea who's back of them?
I wish to heaven I did.
What about you, Mr. Sherman?
Well, if I had an idea strong enough to talk about, I'd be talking about it in court.
What about this Shorty Wells? Was he in on them before Blake sent him to prison?
Yes, supposedly, but he wouldn't spill a word about the setup at his trial.
Afraid to, maybe, huh?
Probably.
Wells is the key to this whole thing, Mr. Dollar. The rackets as well as the killing. Find Shorty Wells, and we can wrap this thing up in 10 minutes.
Then I guess we better find him. Standard theory number 2, an ex-convict with a grudge. Number 1, young, pretty wife, middle-aged husband, big insurance policy hadn't panned out too well. And I wasn't too sold on the second one. It was just too pat somehow. And the fact that Shorty Wells was missing didn't mean much. If I were an ex-con just out of prison and had threatened a man who was later murdered, I'd be missing too. And yet the pat answer was sometimes the right one. The case was still like the town itself, wide open. I walked out of City Hall, started down the sidewalk toward the taxi stand. I didn't know what move to try next. Technically, of course, I was out of it. Since the beneficiary had an ironclad alibi, she'd get paid regardless of who actually did kill Blake. I didn't pay any attention to the horn the first time, but when it sounded again, I turned to look. She was parked at the curb a few yards away. Marty Blake.
I've been waiting for you, Johnny.
Have you?
Yes. I wanted to talk to you.
You didn't earlier.
Well, I guess you just rubbed me the wrong way. You weren't very nice to me, you know.
Sorry.
You've talked to Dave Sherman, I suppose.
Yep. He gives you an airtight alibi. Why didn't you tell me he was there that night when I talked with you this afternoon?
I might have. If you'd been nicer to me.
Oh, I see.
You'd have checked it with him anyway.
Yeah, I suppose I would have at that.
Well, now that you know I'm not a murderess, maybe we can get to be friends, Johnny.
You think so?
You're still not being very nice.
I am always politely respectful toward new widows, Mrs. Blake. At least until after the first week.
I told you I didn't care about Ed.
Who do you care about, besides yourself? Shorty Wells, by any chance?
Shorty Wells? Who told you that?
And you know him, huh?
Of course I know him. As I used to know him.
Where is he now?
How should I know? What are you trying to pull if you think for 1 minute that you're...
Get down, quick! Are you all right, Mrs. Blake?
Yes, I guess so. Those shots. Johnny, somebody was trying to kill you.
How do you know it was me they were shooting at?
What?
Maybe they were out to kill you, Mrs. Blake.
Now, here's our star to tell you about tomorrow's episode of this week's story.
Tomorrow, an old flame and a new one, and 2 men get burned. One becomes an alcoholic, the other a human torch. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
This is Chesterton Radio, your home for podcasts of works by G.K. Chesterton, plus drama, comedy, mystery, science fiction, big bands, and much more. The soundtrack to your Chesterton day at chestertonradio.com.
It's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
How you making out, Johnny boy?
Who is this?
You disappoint me, Johnny. You ought to recognize the condition, if not the voice.
Joe Crayley?
Yeah, the drunken reporter on the Daily Herald.
I want to talk to you. Where are you?
Oh, no, you don't. Not tonight.
Why not?
In 10 minutes, you'd have me shooting my big mouth off.
About the rackets here?
And the murder of the Honorable Chief of Police, and the peculiar morals of his lovely young wife, and...
Joe, listen.
And last but not least, the ethical and philosophical problems of an intellectual lush, a reformed idealist who once or even twice
Joe,
tried...
an hour ago, in front of City Hall, somebody fired 5 shots at me. Joe, are you there?
Beat it, Johnny. Grab a plane, train, bus, or walk, but get out now. When they put the finger on, it sticks. Greensport, boy, is a wide open town.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, location Greensport, Missouri, to the Home Office, Great Plains Guarantee Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Open Town Matter. Expense account continued. Item 7, $1.85, taxi to the home of the mayor of Greensport, Will Lyons. I decided to go straight to headquarters, so to speak. Joe Crayley, professional reporter and semi-pro drunk, might have been able to help, but I didn't know where to find him. So far, I had a lot of questions, no answers. Police Chief Ed Blake had been shot to death in his own home with his own gun. His young widow, Marty, and City Attorney Dave Sherman had been present and both told the same story, mysterious prowler. Supposedly, the prowler was Shorty Wells, an ex-convict with a grudge against the murdered chief. But Shorty was missing, and the case was at a standstill. So I went right to the top, to Mayor Lyons.
Come in, Mr. Dollar. Come right in.
Thanks.
My wife is going out this evening, committee meeting at the Women's Club. We can talk here in the library, if you don't mind.
All right, fine.
Take a chair there. Yeah, well, Mr. Dollar, I will say it's a pleasure to see you safe and sound.
Well, you heard about the shooting, then?
I heard the shots from my office. Then the acting chief of police phoned me a few minutes later.
Well, does he know yet who did it?
Not the slightest. There were no witnesses. At least none who cared to talk. Car took off at high speed and then just disappeared.
Like Shorty Wells. Fine.
I sympathize with your feelings, Mr. Dollar. I'd feel the same way if I'd been made a target of. But you can rest assured, sir, that every facility of law enforcement in this town is working round the clock to bring the culprits to justice.
Yeah, well, that's very comforting, Mayor. But actually, I'm not sure I was the target.
What do you mean?
Well, when I left you and Dave Sherman and came out onto the sidewalk, Marty Blake was waiting for me in her car parked at the curb. She'd been there about 20 minutes, she told me.
Yes, but
whoever fired those shots had the setup planned, worked out. And I don't think they could very well have planned it for me.
Why not?
My schedule wasn't predictable enough. They didn't know when I'd leave City Hall, whether I'd be alone or not, or what I'd do when I stepped outside.
It's a point, all right.
Marty, on the other hand, had been there for 20 minutes. Plenty of time to arrange the thing.
But why? Why should anyone want to kill her?
Well, there you got me. I don't know.
After the shooting, of course, I had a police officer assigned to guard duty at her home, but I regarded it as merely a routine precaution. I was certain that the attempt was made on your life, Mr. Dollar.
Well, those bullets came too close to both of us for very much peace of mind.
Well, at least Mrs. Blake has protection now.
Oh, yeah. Unless that police officer himself knocks her off.
Well, you're joking, of course.
Mayor, that's the worst thing about this whole case. I don't know whether I'm joking or not.
But surely you don't think...
And are you certain of which ones you can trust in the attorney's office, the police force, in your own department even?
Not entirely, no.
With the rackets as wide open as they are here, some of the men around you are bound to be involved.
I know. It stands to reason. Every raid we've ever attempted has been tipped off before we even got started. Blake tried while he was alive. Dave Sherman tried. I even organized two myself. Told nobody about them. Brought in state police to carry them out. Same result.
Say, what about Blake? He must have been in with the mob to live on that lavish scale he did.
I suppose so. Dave and I suspected him at times, but we could never turn up any actual evidence.
Were he and the city attorney friends?
Ed and Dave? No, they couldn't get along at all.
And yet, the night Blake was shot, Dave Sherman was staying overnight in his home.
Yes, I know. I've thought myself it was a little odd. Dave says Blake had asked him to. Invited him to go on a fishing trip the next morning.
A fishing trip? And yet they couldn't get along.
I know. I can't explain it any more than you can.
Any chance Dave Sherman was the intended victim that night instead of Blake?
I really don't see how, Mr. Dollar, in view of the circumstances. Blake was killed when he heard a prowler and went downstairs to investigate. No one could have expected Dave to do something like that.
No, I guess not. It was just an idea.
I've thought of all kinds of outlandish possibilities myself, but it always comes back to the same thing. Shorty Wells.
Yeah, the ex-convict who swore he'd get Blake when he went to prison.
He was paroled just the week before, Mr. Dollar, and he was seen in town the day before the killing.
And nobody has found hide nor hair of him since. Yeah, it adds up all right. But somehow I still can't buy it. Maybe it just adds up a little too well. 3/4 of the criminals who are sentenced make threats like that, but it's a rare one who carries it out.
Rare, yes, but not unknown.
Oh, true. I admit he's a strong possibility. But when I hit town this afternoon, I thought Marty Blake was a strong possibility. Until the city attorney himself came up with an airtight alibi for her.
Why did you suspect her, Mr. Dollar?
Insurance. A $50,000 policy on Blake's life. His wife's the beneficiary.
Well, I don't imagine $50,000 will last Mrs. Blake very long.
Hey, tell me something, Mayor. Are she and Dave Sherman close friends?
At one time, yes. In fact, Dave was pretty serious about her. But after she married Blake last year, Dave turned against her completely.
I see.
I don't think he'd risk an alibi for her out of friendship, if that's what you're thinking.
Oh, I don't know exactly what I'm thinking. Mostly I'm just guessing.
I've been doing that 2 years now, Mr. Dollar. Guessing, figuring, trying to spot the leader behind these rackets, not knowing which officials I could trust.
Mayor, is Dave Sherman one of those you can trust?
I'm not sure.
Good evening, Mrs. Blake.
Well, this is a surprise. Come in, Johnny. Join the party.
Thanks.
Of course, I'm the party. There isn't anybody else. Except my watchdog sitting out there in front.
Yeah, I saw him.
Cute, isn't he?
I didn't notice.
I did. Think that's terrible, Johnny? A girl who's been a widow 4 days noticing another guy.
Why not? You didn't care anything about your husband.
That's right, I didn't. Here's to all husbands. May they rest in peace. He's a cute cop, all right. You know what? I asked him to come inside and have a drink with me, and he actually blushed and stammered. Now, wasn't that cute?
Devastating.
Would you blush and stammer, Johnny?
No, I'd take the drink. Which I will, by the way, if you don't mind.
Here. Make me another one, too.
All right. What's the reason for this one-woman celebration, Mrs. Blake? I said,
I heard you. And you can call me Marty if you want me to answer you.
All right, Marty. Why the lonesome gal routine?
It's not so lonesome now, Johnny.
Oh. Here's your drink.
Used to getting shot at.
Shot at how, Marty? Like we were this afternoon? Or like your husband?
Everybody can't be lucky. Maybe Ed just didn't live right.
Well, he's not living anyway now.
I'll bet you know how to live, Johnny.
Oh, sure. I got a system.
Tell me about it.
Well, the first thing I do is hook up with the rackets so I can buy my wife lots of expensive gifts.
Why don't you lay off that stuff? Why don't you try being nice for a change?
Well, that's not part of my system.
Look, I didn't kill him. You know that now. So why don't you relax and be human?
Oh, the last time I relaxed around you, I caught the breeze off of 5 bullets.
You're breathing, aren't you?
I might not be, if they'd been after me instead of you.
So you're still on that kick?
Oh, it figures, Marty. I'm no threat to anybody, not yet. I don't know enough about this mess.
And you're saying I do, I suppose.
I think so. Now, who'd want to get you out of the way, Marty? To keep you from talking, maybe.
Don't you ever give up.
All right, tell me this. Did Dave Sherman really see that shooting? Or is he just giving you an alibi?
Why don't you ask him?
Or is he giving himself an alibi by any chance?
You're crazy.
Maybe. Where's Shorty Wells?
What?
I said, where is Shorty?
I heard what you said.
Well, then suppose you tell me.
Get out.
What are you so upset about?
Get out of here right this minute. Get out, or so help me, I'll throw
Take it easy, Marty. What's that cute cop going to think?
I don't care what anybody thinks. You get out of here and get out fast.
Item 9, $14.40. Drinks, tips, and transportation for a local expedition in plain and fancy pub crawling. I was looking for Joe Crayley, disillusioned idealist and erstwhile reporter on the Greensport Daily Herald. I found him on my 3rd martini. He was on his 7th.
How, Johnny? How'd you do it?
To what?
How'd you find me?
Called your paper. They gave me a list of your hangouts. I had 4 more to go.
A reputation is a wonderful thing. Keeps you from staying off the straight and narrow. He's looking at you.
Right. Joe, tell me about Marty.
Tell you what about her?
Everything you know.
What for? She's got an alibi.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But you still won't give up. Well, she hates champagne, but she always orders it. Why? Because it costs more.
I see.
She's every man's dream, Johnny. A pink and gold doll in spangled tights, and she's a 4-star tramp.
She's an ex-dancer, isn't she?
She's an ex-lot of things. Ex-girlfriend of Shorty Wells. Ex-girlfriend...
Girlfriend of Shorty Wells?
Sure. Ed Blake took her away from him. That's why Shorty threatened to kill him. Said Blake was framing him. Maybe he was, I don't know. Anything could have happened with the police they got in this town.
Crooked? Is that what you're trying to say?
Some of them are that. The rest of them are useless. Like that business with the gun.
What gun?
That Ed Blake was shot with. They found it lying beside his body, his own gun. They just assumed he'd shot it out with the killer. It was 2 days before they realized he'd been shot with that gun. That Blake hadn't used it, the killer had.
Wait a minute. Do you think Shorty Wells and Marty could have planned the thing together?
Johnny, I wouldn't put anything past that dame.
Why do you hate her so much, Joe?
Guess again, my friend. I don't hate her. I'm in love with her, always will be.
Joe?
Yeah, before she met Shorty Wells, she used to be my girl. Gives you something to think about, doesn't it, Johnny?
Now, here's our star to tell you about tomorrow's episode of this week's story.
Tomorrow, a man with a gun, desperate, faces a blazing inferno and gambles his life. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
This is Chesterton Radio, your home for podcasts of works by G.K. Chesterton, plus drama, comedy, mystery, science fiction, big bands, and much more. The soundtrack to your Chesterton day at Chesterton Radio.
Hollywood, it's time now for
Johnny Dollar. Hello?
Hello. Johnny?
Yeah, who's calling? Hello?
Hang on a second, Johnny.
Look, what the devil? Is that you, Joe? Joe?
Sorry to keep you waiting, Johnny. I was trying to get all the dope on another phone.
What dope? And how did you sober up so fast?
There's a big story breaking, boy, and lush or not, I'm still a reporter.
Then go somewhere and report. I'm going to bed.
You want to bet?
Now, look, Joe.
Nobody sleeps in Greensport, Johnny. It's a wide-open town. Racket, shootings, a murdered police chief with a lovely widow.
Sure, fine. So what's the big story?
A fire, boy. House burning down. Flames 50 feet high. 3 alarms. Put your clothes on and let's get going.
You get going. The only big story I'll be interested in is when Marty Blake is charged with murder.
Johnny, that's where the fire is. At Marty Blake's.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, location Greensport, Missouri. To the Home Office, Great Plains Guarantee Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, the Open Town Matter. Expense account continued. Item 10, $1.50 for a breakneck taxi ride to Marty Blake's home. Its location marked against the night sky by a pillar of flame visible for a mile. The fire didn't make sense, so it fit in nicely with the rest of the case. None of it made sense. Police Chief Ed Blake, Marty's middle-aged husband of 8 months, had been shot to death in his own home with his own gun. And less than 24 hours later, Marty had filed claim on his $50,000 life insurance policy. She didn't love him and admitted it. Good case. Except for one thing. The city attorney himself was present at the time of the shooting and backed up Marty's story of a mysterious prowler, supposedly ex-convict Shorty Wells. But Shorty was missing, and the whole thing was just a little too convenient, too pat, especially in a wide-open town. Joe Cradley was going to meet me at the fire, but I didn't see him around. The flames had taken a strong hold, and the whole outside of the house was blazing. The firemen couldn't do much except try to control it, keep it from spreading, and to hold back the crowds that had collected on the street and lawns.
Well, how do you figure this one, Mr. Dollar?
Among others present was City Attorney Dave Sherman.
Well, you wanted to get things stirred up. Well, they seem to be stirred, all right.
Were you here when this happened, Mr. Sherman?
No, this time I'm not a witness for the defense. I arrived after the fire ended.
Yeah? What about Marty?
She's all right. She got out before it really caught. She's sitting over there in my car.
Then she was here when it started.
Yeah.
Alone?
Well, so it seems.
But there was a police officer on guard earlier.
I thought you meant alone in the house. Yeah, he was out here in front. First thing he knew, flames were breaking out of the windows, and then Marty came running out of the house.
No one had arrived or left?
Well, not that he saw. Well, you're still trying to tag her, huh?
Oh, I'm trying to tag whoever is guilty. She figures, that's all.
Not on the shooting.
No, not with the alibi you've given her.
Mr. Dollar, look. She was standing 10 feet away from me in the second-floor hall when Ed Blake was shot to death in the dark downstairs. Now, that is not an alibi. It is a fact.
Oh, yeah, sure, I know.
Unless, of course, I'm lying.
All right, are you?
Why?
For old time's sake, maybe. You were in love with her once, Mr. Sherman.
Oh, I could name 24 guys around this town who were. Once.
Yeah. Shorty Wells, for instance.
That's right. That's why Shorty threatened to kill Blake when Blake sent him to prison. He claimed he was being framed out of the way to give Blake a clear field.
Go on.
Well, Shorty's a hoodlum. He was guilty as charged, all right?
But Blake was in on the rackets, wasn't he?
Well, it would seem that way.
Then there's also Joe Cradley. Marty was his girl at one time, wasn't she?
Yeah, that's when he started drinking, when she threw him over.
Why did she throw him over?
For the usual reason. Somebody knew.
Who?
Well, me, I thought. Took me 3 months to find out that I was running interference for Shorty Wells.
All right, so Joe Cradley took to drink. What did you take to, Mr. Sherman?
Law enforcement. I set out to break the rackets in this town and get rid of hoodlums like Shorty Wells and all the rest of them.
Yeah, but the rackets are still here.
And I'm still trying, Dollar. Now, look, I want to get one thing very straight.
What?
Ed Blake's killing. It happened just exactly the way I told you. That story is true. Marty didn't do it.
Maybe not. But she's in it some way. She's bound to be.
Well, that's something I wouldn't know.
Everywhere you turn in this case, you keep hearing about Marty Blake. Marty Blake. She's the one link that ties everything together.
Well, maybe.
That fire there. What's the story on that?
Well, why don't you ask her?
I left him standing there, staring into the fire. Staring into his own past, maybe. I didn't know. To me, it was still a puzzle, a question mark. And I didn't have the answer to him. Not much else, in fact. If he was telling the truth, Marty Blake couldn't have killed her husband. And so far, at least, there was nothing to show he was lying. I pushed on through the crowd of spectators, the thrill seekers, the morbidly curious, followers of fire engines, and walked toward Sherman's car. Marty was sitting there alone, subdued for once and quiet. And she looked scared.
Hello, Johnny. Get in and sit with me.
All right.
Look at it. Isn't it terrible?
Yeah, it is. It'd be worse if you were in it.
Well, I was when it started.
Just how did it start?
I don't know. I think you were right, Johnny, about that shooting in front of the city hall.
Oh?
I think it was me they were after, not you. Now they've tried again.
Possible.
There's no other reason for burning down my home.
Who do you mean by they, Marty? Who?
I don't know. Whoever killed Ed, I guess.
If you know, you'd better tell me while you still can. If somebody is out to get you, if that's what's behind all this, then they obviously mean business.
I don't know, Johnny. I told you that.
Well, how about a guess, then?
Well, maybe Shorty Wells. I don't know.
Why? Why? The man he threatened is already dead. Why would he go after you?
Maybe to get even. He told me he hated me when I broke off with him. It's just the kind of thing he'd think of doing. Or didn't you know he was in love with me once?
Oh, I know. I'm asking you, how did the fire start?
I don't know, really. After you left this evening, I lay down on the sofa. I'd been drinking, as you know, and I guess I just, went to sleep anyway.
No one else had been there after I left?
No. Anyway, I woke up with smoke all around and flames and all. It was terrible, Johnny. I was just lucky I got out alive.
You always were lucky, Marty.
Joe, what are you doing here?
How about it, Johnny? Are you glad I phoned or not?
Oh, yeah, sure. Wouldn't have missed it for a million.
Has she confessed yet? We can run a new headline on the extra if she has.
I can do without any remarks from you, Joe.
Sure you can, baby. You're doing fine, just as you are.
Get away from here and leave me alone.
Can't do it, baby. I'm assigned to cover the fire. Gotta get all the angles. Human interest. That's you, baby. You are human, aren't you?
You stupid fool.
Financial angles, too. Got one there you might be interested in, Johnny. Did you know the house is heavily insured against fire?
Yes, I know, Joe. I checked through the company report before I left the hotel.
Oh, what of it? What if it is? Most houses are insured against fire, aren't they?
Sure they are, especially by prudent people like you. People who think of everything.
Oh, take it easy, Joe.
Get him away from here, Johnny.
Only you didn't think of everything, baby.
What?
It's too bad your car wasn't in the garage instead of sitting out in the driveway. Then all your assets would have been converted into cash. Nice, green, bloody cash.
Get away from here. Get away and leave me alone.
Why, baby? You can afford me now. You couldn't a couple of years ago. That's why you're tied up with all the other...
What the devil?
They came from the house. Well, there couldn't be...
Ammunition, maybe. Yeah, your husband must have kept boxes of cartridges around the house.
Look. There by the cellar door.
Somebody's staggering up out of the basement.
Johnny, look. He's got a gun in his hand.
It can't be.
He's fallen down on the ground. Come on, Joe.
Yep. Oh, man. When the dam breaks, everything goes.
How could anybody come out of that thing alive?
We Greensporters are tough cookies, Johnny.
Lucky, apparently. He's passed out cold. Another minute and he wouldn't have made it.
His clothes are smoldering there.
Yeah. Let's turn him over and get that coat off.
Right.
Easy now.
All right. Oh, good Lord.
What's the matter?
This is the boy everybody in town has been looking for. Shorty Wells.
Room 604. Greensport City Hospital. Time, midnight. The time when the pulse of living starts to slow down. The beginning of the quiet time, when the city sleeps and the nurses and interns walk even more softly. When a ticking clock becomes a drumbeat in the ears of restless patients. The time of crises, when battles for life are fought in silence and won or lost. A battle like that was being fought in 604, witnessed at the moment by myself and City Attorney Dave Sherman.
Well, this is always the tough part. The slow part of waiting it out.
Maybe a long wait, Mr. Sherman. Nearly 3 hours, and he still hasn't regained consciousness.
You know, I can't understand where he's been hiding out since Blake was shot.
Yeah, well, it's hard to tell.
I've turned this town upside down, I tell you. I just can't understand it.
Oh, I can't understand a lot of things. It's just another one of a lot of things about this case that are hard to figure out.
Well, it's tied up with the rackets, that's what I'm sure of.
I'm not sure of anything about this mess.
Yes, if we could just tag the person behind them, we could wrap it up. If we could only... Oh, excuse me. I'll get it. Dave Sherman speaking. Oh, yes, Mayor. Oh, Dr. Morton says he may hang on for a day or two, but as far as pulling through it, he hasn't got much chance. Oh, he hasn't been conscious at all yet. Yes, I'll keep in touch. I'll let you know the minute there's an... All right, Mayor. Good night.
Mayor Lyons, huh?
Yeah. He's a real fuss budget sometimes. He ought to go to bed.
Wait a second. Hey, he's trying to talk. Oh, false alarm again.
Dollar, do you think he started that fire?
Oh, I don't know. If he did, he got caught in his own trap. I just can't figure what he'd hope to gain by doing anything.
Johnny, Dave.
Aye.
Has he been able to talk yet?
Not yet, Joe. Get your story found?
Just under the wire. Of course, it consisted mainly of questions.
Well, Shorty Wells has the answers. If he were only able to give them out.
I can't figure him firing those shots, Johnny.
I can't either. He fired them before he came out of the blaze. He apparently wasn't trying to shoot anyone.
He couldn't even see anyone the way he's burned.
I'm afraid all we can do is wait. At least we'll know the whole story once he's able to talk.
Suppose he never is able.
Well,
he's the only lead we've had. And he's the only one we've got now. The whole case is lying right there on that bed. If Shorty Wells dies without regaining consciousness, then we can drop it and forget it. Because we're beat.
Now, here's our star to tell you about the final episode of this week's story.
Tomorrow, death strikes again, lashes out violently, and mistakes its target. And a wide-open town blows sky high. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Les Crutchfield, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
This is Chesterton Radio, the true, good, and beautiful at Chesterton Radio.
It's time now for
Johnny Dollar.
It's me, Johnny.
Marty?
Yeah, how is he?
How about the same? Dr. Morton just gave him another transfusion.
Has he been able to say anything yet?
He hasn't even been conscious. Why, Marty?
Well, who's there with you?
Joe Crayley and the city attorney.
Look, Johnny, I've got to talk to you. Right away.
All right, go ahead and talk.
No, not on the phone.
All right, it's room 604, City Hospital. Come on over.
Not with them there. Why don't you come meet me?
Because Shorty Wells is the key to this whole case. If he's able to talk before he dies, I want to be here to listen.
Suppose I tell you I'm ready to talk, Johnny.
Are you telling me?
I'm in an all-night lunchroom right across the street from the hospital. Can you come over here?
All right, Marty. I'll gamble with you. Be there in 5 minutes.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. From Special Investigator Johnny Dollar, location Greensport, Missouri, to the Home Office Great Plains Guarantee Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Assignment, The open town matter. Expense account, final page. I hung up the phone more puzzled than ever, and heaven knows the case had been puzzling from the start. Marty Blake, young widow of the murdered police chief, had been completely uncooperative and unwilling to talk. And now she was reversing her field. Why? Her house had burned to the ground earlier in the evening, and Shorty Wells, number 1 on the city attorney's wanted for murder list, had been found trapped in the flames. Maybe this had something to do with Marty's phone call. She'd been my number 1 suspect at first, since she stood to collect $50,000 as beneficiary of her husband's life insurance. But then the city attorney himself, Dave Sherman, had provided her with an airtight alibi, and I'd reluctantly let her off the hook. Now this. I didn't know what she was up to, and I couldn't afford not to find out.
Something up, Dolly?
Well, that was Marty Blake, Mr. Sherman. She's in a lunchroom across the street. She wants to see me.
Oh, what about?
She didn't say.
Well, go ahead and talk to her if you want to, Johnny. I'll call you if Shorty starts to regain consciousness.
All right, thanks, Joe.
I'm sticking right here myself. This one I'm going to follow personally.
Well, if you really want to break the rackets in this town, your answer is lying right there in that bed, Shorty Wells.
I think you're right, if he's ever able to talk.
And if your police laddies don't fall over their own feet again, the way they did on that gun business when Ed Blake was shot.
That mistake was partly justified, Joe. It was the chief's own gun that was lying beside his body. It was natural to assume that he'd exchanged shots with a prowler.
Yeah, but 2 days to realize he'd been shot with his own gun.
All right. They fouled up, I admit it.
And the ones who aren't stupid are crooked. Every raid you try to pull has been tipped off in the
I
inside.
know it.
Even when Mayor Lyons brought in state police, the whole plan was tipped.
Which you took great pleasure in pointing out in your news
All
story.
right,
and
you guys, look now. I'll leave you two to settle this. Stick on this guy like a leech. And if he shows any sign of coming to and talking, let me know right away, will you?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
I'll see you later.
Back here in the booth, Johnny.
Right. Well, what's on your mind, Marty?
Sit down, Johnny. Here, come on.
Why not? Well?
The waiter's in back if you'd like some coffee or something.
No, thanks. Okay, now what is it?
What is what?
You had to talk to me right away. How I talk?
Johnny, I'm not too hard to take, am I?
No, you're a pink and gold doll. Wild honeysuckle and a handful of stars. At least that's what a couple of guys said today.
I don't care what a couple of guys said. What do you say, Johnny?
I guess the description fits, as far as looks are concerned. And if that's all you want to talk about...
No, wait, Johnny. I'm in the clear on this. You know that. The night my husband was killed, I've got an alibi nobody could shake, right?
Well, I'm pretty well convinced you didn't pull the trigger, if that's what you mean.
And you could convince the insurance company, too, couldn't you? If you would.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they'd go pretty much on my report. But I don't see...
Why don't we get this settled and over with? Why don't you be nice, Johnny, and turn in a real good report?
Oh, so that's the pitch.
Well, it's not a pitch. I didn't do it, so why can't you tell them so?
Why don't we get some more answers first to a lot of questions? Explain a few odd angles, maybe.
Like what?
Like the fact that you heard the noise and woke up, that you sent your husband downstairs, that you turned on the light behind him and made him a perfect target for whoever held the gun.
Johnny,
Like the fact that you filed your insurance claim less than 24 hours after your husband was killed. Suppose we hear what Shorty Wells has to say before I make any report.
What if Shorty dies without talking?
Well, in that case, I guess you will be in the clear. Because right now, he's the only lead I've got. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Johnny, make that report. Make it now.
Sorry.
I'll give you $10,000 out of the insurance.
Oh, you are anxious, aren't you?
I just want to get it settled. Sit down, Johnny, and let's talk
Johnny.
about it.
Yeah, Joe, what is it?
Fireman I know just came by the hospital, Johnny. They found out why Shorty fired those shots just before he ran out of the blazing house.
Why?
That cellar door was padlocked on the outside. He had to shoot the lock off to get out.
Then he probably didn't set the fire after all. Not if he was locked in the basement. What about that, Marty? Was he the one who was supposed to die in the fire?
If he was hiding out in my cellar, I didn't know anything about it.
Just another one of those odd angles, huh?
Oh, stop it.
Johnny, by the way, what do you want to see me about?
See about? What do you mean?
Well, yeah, The nurse said you phoned the hospital. Said you wanted me to meet you here. You mean you didn't?
Come on, Joe. Let's get back there. Sure, that's why she wanted me to meet her there, to get me away from that room. And somebody phoned and got you away.
Elevator's coming down now, Johnny.
Shorty's the one big threat to whoever's guilty. They know that if he talks, they're tagged. We'll get up to his room.
No, I thought...
Mr. Sherman, leaving?
Well, yes, somebody phoned. It's the mayor. He wants me to meet him across the street.
Anybody up there with Shorty Wells?
Well, the doctor will be back in a few moments.
Come on, Sherman, back into the...
Wait a minute! Look, I've got to meet Mayor
Start it up,
Lyons.
Joe. Start it up.
6th floor, number 6.
May I ask what's going on here? I haven't got time to go back upstairs. I told you...
I'm afraid you'll have to take time, Mr. Sherman.
It was all right to leave, Dollar. Shorty wasn't showing any signs of coming to.
Did you make sure of that?
Did I... Look, Dollar, I don't get what you're driving.
All right. Come on now, let's go.
Would somebody please let me in on this?
Let's take a look at Shorty first, Mr. Sherman.
Johnny, what happened to that cop who was on duty?
Well, he was here in the hall when I left just a moment ago.
Oh, he got to walk down to the... Did you leave that door ajar, Mr. Sherman?
Why, no, of course not.
Come on, but quietly.
What the devil?
Are we interrupting something, Mayor Lyons?
What's he doing with that pillow?
Nothing. I wasn't doing a thing.
You were holding it down over Shorty's face. Get out of the way. I think you were Shorty's dead. You smothered him with that pillow.
Oh, no, he was dead when I came in. I was just moving the pillow, Dave.
Did you have to get us all out of this room and then send the police guard away just to move a pillow?
Mr. Dollar, are you suggesting...
Well,
that
I'm suggesting it for one. Dollar, I've been sure for months that Mayor Lyons was back of the rackets here, but I didn't have any way of proving it.
Until now, perhaps?
Until now, Mayor.
Very well, don't move, any of you.
Oh, now, wait a minute. That gun isn't really your answer, Mayor. There are 3 of us, you know. You can't get us all.
Stay back, Dollar.
Tell me something. Why did you have Ed Blake killed? Wasn't he one of your own boys?
I can tell you why, now. Ed Blake was going to pull out of the rackets, Dollar, and spill the whole setup to me. That was the reason for that fishing trip.
Then it must have been Marty who tipped off Mayor Lyons.
Sure, it figures. She loved that racket money that Ed was bringing home, and Shorty Wells was in town with a grudge against Ed already. Well, it was real convenient for you, wasn't it, Mayor?
As a matter of fact, Dave, it was very convenient.
Then Shorty hid out in the cellar of Marty's house until she decided things would be less complicated if she locked the cellar door and burned the house down.
Marty was a weak link, you might say. Stay back, Dave.
Now, you better give me the gun now, Mayor.
No, get back.
Do what he says, Mayor. You haven't a chance.
I'm warning you, Dollar, if you try
Yeah, I hear you. But I doubt if you can... Let go of it, Mayor. Drop that gun. Let go of... No! Thanks. Now, if
Look
you...
out, he's getting away! Lock the doors! You'll never stop me from...
Look out! That window!
He tripped!
That's 6 floors down.
Yeah.
Well, he got out of being prosecuted.
As a matter of fact, there's nobody left to prosecute.
You want to bet? She was still sitting there in the lunchroom across the street from the hospital. And she'd heard what had happened. I knew it the second Dave and I walked in, from the half smile of triumph on her face, and from the way she greeted me.
Too bad, Johnny. You should have taken my offer because I don't need your help now. Your company's going to have to pay off. I'm really in the clear now.
You are, huh?
And poor Dave, with nobody left to prosecute.
He still has you, Marty. Accomplice to your husband's murder.
Johnny. Shorty died without talking. Mayor Lyons is dead. No witnesses, no case.
Sorry, Marty. There is a witness.
Oh? Who?
You.
What are you talking about? What's that paper?
Well, you intended it to be an insurance claim. But actually, it's more of a confession. Signed and witnessed.
What?
You were over-anxious, Marty. And you filled it out in complete detail. It says, we found my husband's body at the foot of the stairs.
That's right.
That he'd been shot and killed with his own gun.
Well, it's true, isn't it? That's what happened.
Yeah. But this claim was in the main office of the insurance company less than 24 hours after your husband was killed. The police didn't find out he'd been shot with his own gun until 2 days later. Real neat confession, huh, Marty? Expense account item 12, $310.45. Incidentals in Greensport and transportation back to Hartford. Expense account total, $516.20. End of account, end of report. Remarks? Marty Blake never was able to explain how she knew about that gun. She sure tried. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Now, here's our star to tell you about next week's story.
Before I do that, please let me say thanks to all of you who are so kind about writing and telling us how much you like Johnny Dollar. It's a very gratifying experience. It's encouragement to all of us who are involved in production of the program, and, well, we appreciate your letters more than you know. As always, I'll try to answer you promptly, but sometimes the mail does pile up. In any event, thanks. Thanks very much for writing. Next week, a yacht that wasn't there and a man who wasn't there. They never were, but that's where I found them. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. It is written by Les Crutchfield and produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Heard in this week's cast were Gene Tatum, Paul Dubov, Joseph Kern, Stacey Harris, and Russell Thorson. Musical supervision by Amerigo Marino. Be sure to join us on Monday night, same time and station, for another exciting story of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
The National Broadcasting Company presents Lives of Great Men, a new series on great leaders in human progress, presented by Dr. Edward Howard Griggs, distinguished lecturer, critic, and author of The New Humanism and many other books. In his talks, Dr. Griggs is building a story of civilization based on outstanding characters through the ages, and how each one influences his own and future times. This evening, Dr. Griggs will discuss Ibsen, psychologist and critic of modern society. We present Edward Howard Griggs.
My friends, Ibsen is the giant of modern drama, the greatest dramatic genius since Shakespeare. The surprising fact is that his criticism of society applies more pungently to our America than to the Scandinavian world for which he was writing. If we consider his originality and depth of thought, his development of a new form of dramatic art, and his profound influence on contemporaries and followers, he is the outstanding figure in world literature since Goethe. Such a master transcends our classifications. We think of him as a great realist, holding the mirror up faithfully to life. With that, he is also idealist, a dreamer of dreams, with a symbolism as far-reaching as Maeterlinck's own. At times, he seems to us a cynical Mephistopheles, coldly using the anatomist's knife on the evils of society. At other times, he is a flaming Jeremiah, arraigning the world. We miss in him the geniality that marked Shakespeare and Goethe. He is an ice Jotun of the Northland, but ever ready to flame into the Loki of destructive fire. Born in 1828, the same year with Tolstoy, Ibsen was of Danish, German, and Scotch ancestry. His boyhood was somber, for the affluent father lost all his property except one poor farm when Ibsen was a lad of 8. There were years of sordid poverty, and then at 15, Ibsen was sent down to Grimstad, a small town on the southeast coast of Norway, to clerk in a drug shop. For 6 years, he did distasteful work by day and ate his heart out in brooding loneliness at night. The Revolution of 1848 caught his imagination, and with the partly finished play Cataline in his pocket, he removed to Norway's capital, Christiania. He starved on hack work for a time until the attention of Ole Bull, the Norwegian violinist, was drawn to him. Through Ole Bull's influence, Ibsen was appointed director of the newly established National Theater at Bergen. The salary was small, and he had to do everything: arrange stage, scenery, costumes, coach the actors, direct the play, occasionally write it. At 29, he married, happily, and was transferred to the somewhat larger theater at Christiania. Here he had 6 more years of doing everything concerning the staging of the plays. Probably no other dramatist, not excepting Shakespeare, ever had such drastic training in stagecraft, which, on the basis of his dramatic gift, made him the master he became. The plays he wrote during this period dealt chiefly with Norway's heroic past. He was given a small sum to go north and collect Norwegian folklore, material used later in Peer Gynt, and at 35 was granted a small poet's pension from the crown. The following year he left Norway at the crisis of the war between Denmark and Prussia with other German states over Schleswig-Holstein. Ibsen regarded that war as an international crime perpetrated by Germany and wrote a stirring lyric, A Brother in Need, urging Norway to rise and help. The government responded, but would act only with France and England, who refrained from action then, as recently they have again, under still more flagrant circumstances. In disgust, Ibsen sailed over the seas to Italy. There, under the sunny skies, with the wealth of classic association to stimulate his imagination, he produced the long dramatic poem Brand, a scathing arraignment of his countrymen for their timid vices and virtues, but with a profound philosophy running through it. It teaches that life is worth not what you are, but that to which you dedicate yourself. Gradually the higher truth emerges, that love must guide will to deal wisely with human beings, imperfect as all are. Having freed himself from this mood, he turned to Norwegian folklore, and at 39 produced the unique Peer Gynt, supreme example of Ibsen the poet, creating beauty and significance for the imagination. Like Brand, it contains deep philosophy of life. Peer, believing he was realizing himself by gratifying every whim, fulfilled only the troll maxim, to thyself be enough. Solveig is the one who goes straight through, becoming the woman God meant her to be, while the true Peer Gynt existed only in her transfiguring love. The Italian War drove Ibsen to Germany, his home for much of the next 20 years. He was still poor and struggling in spite of the success of his long poems, but refused offers of translation work to dedicate himself to his art. Meantime, he was reacting on blatant superficial democracy, seeing the true revolution in the spirit of man. At 41, he published The League of Youth, satirizing the local situation in Norwegian politics and breaking for a time with Bjørnson. The result was a fury of attack, the papers containing it reaching Ibsen at Port Said, where he was guest of the Khedive at the opening of the Suez Canal. He answered with a bitterly satiric poem. Later, for the Millenary Festival, he sent home a poem which best of all shows his fighting heroism in proclaiming advanced and unpopular convictions. Let me quote it. My countrymen who filled for me deep bowls of wholesome bitter medicine, such as gave the poet on the margin of his grave fresh force to fight where broken twilight rolls, my countrymen who sped me o'er the wave, an exile with my griefs for pilgrim souls, my fears for burdens, doubts for staff to roam. From the wide world I send you greeting home. I send you thanks for gifts that help and harden, thanks for each hour of purifying pain. Each plant that springs in my poetic garden is rooted where your harshness poured its rain. Each shoot in it, which blooms and burgeons forth, it owes to that gray weather from the north. The sun relaxes, but the fog secures. My country, thanks. My life's best gifts were yours. After several years of intense labor, Ibsen finished at 45 his longest work, Emperor and Galilean. which did not prove, as he hoped, to be his masterpiece. The canvas was too broad, and the theme did not give scope for his philosophy. Returning to Italy, he produced at 51 A Doll's House, the first play in which he completely found himself and initiating the great series of dramas by which he is now known internationally. It is significant of his long and slow development that the series came so late. While a most effective stage play, A Doll's House proved to be an important social document, greatly accelerating the movement for emancipating women. It was a theme of discussion at every tea party and café clutch throughout Europe. The result was to make Ibsen wonder if he might have a function as teacher. He had not thought of himself in that capacity. In an early letter to the King of Norway, he had said, "My aim is to make my people think great thoughts." With a new idea, he produced Ghosts, carrying out the study of heredity begun in A Doll's House. The response was a storm of attack due to his having arraigned social as well as biological ghosts. He was as much surprised as he had been by the contrasting reception of A Doll's House. He did not wait the usual 2 years before replying. His regular habit in the great series was to spend a year thinking out his characters from birth to the end of their lives, and then use the second year to write the brief chapter given in his play. This time he came back at his critics in a year with An Enemy of the People. While a good stage play, it is less carefully finished than the others in the series and is rather a social satire containing the most drastic indictment of democracy that has been made since Plato. Through Dr. Stockmann, he argued that the rule of the majority must mean the rule of the many fools over the few wise, and that the new and therefore most important truths will always be in possession of a small minority on the advancing margin of life. Ibsen never saw the answer to his indictment, which we can see, and so reached the nadir of pessimism in The Wild Duck, produced at 56. It portrays the meddling reformer going about presenting the claim of the ideal and succeeding only in disrupting the adjustments poor broken-winged humans have made of their lives. He had been away from Norway for 20 years, with only a brief visit home. At 57, he returned for a longer visit. The long struggle with poverty was over. He had been a careful saver and shrewd investor, and was now affluent and famous. He spent the summer at Molde on the coast, brooding over the sea. The situation in Norway deeply distressed him because of the bitter passions aroused by the 10 years' fight, finally completely successful, for a constitutional democracy. In a speech to working men, he said nobility of character must be introduced by women and labor, for it is character alone that makes us free. He returned to Munich and produced Rosmersholm. While inspired by Norway's political situation, it became a story of human beings and human fates. It is the supreme example of the retrospective drama, beginning just before the tragic crisis, then withdrawing veil after veil from the past causing it. This was Ibsen's characteristic method in the late group of plays. The summer at Molde and another at the north end of Jutland had reawakened Ibsen's love and longing for the sea. In that mood, he wrote The Lady from the Sea, the one play in which he dreams life out to serene and happy conclusion, giving his philosophy of marriage as the voluntary acceptance of mutual responsibility by two intelligent persons on a plane of moral equality. Next came the remorseless Heda Gabler, depicting, as he said, human beings, human emotions, and human destinies upon a groundwork of certain of the social conditions and principles of the present day. The crown of Ibsen's stage dramas in technical execution, it is pure psychology of character with no political or other extraneous element. At 63, Ibsen went home to Norway for the remainder of his life. The Master Builder, produced soon after, is his personal dream, inspired by a moving brief chapter of his own experience, which shocked him into wondering if he had climbed as high as he had built. Radical in thought, he had been singularly conservative in life, and must have asked, had he an absorbed portrayal of life, forfeited life? Now settled in Christiania, renowned and prosperous, he continued to brood over life, creating men and women in its tangled skein. The poignant little Eyolf is a culmination of symbolism. All the characters, except the lovely and by the critics misunderstood Rita, being symbols. John Gabriel Borkman followed, portraying a financial schemer, but centering on the heart of Ibsen's philosophy that the unpardonable sin is the sin against love. This receives clearest expression in Ibsen's last play, which he called his epilogue, When We Dead Awaken. What an epilogue it is to what a life. It shows that if art, instead of being made a way of life, is substituted for life, when we dead awaken, we discover that we have never lived, and the art turns to dust and ashes in the artist's hand. While he was working on this play, Ibsen's 70th birthday had been celebrated with many honors. The excitement brought a slight stroke, but he rallied to complete When We Dead Awaken. A severe stroke followed. He lingered through 6 years with periods of partial darkness, tenderly cared for by his devoted wife, and died at 78. Life is not as remorseless as Ibsen. He takes one tendency of character and carries it to extreme conclusion, where in life there are compensating adjustments and a power of recovery he did not recognize. In the complex world of men and women, good and evil, light and shadow, laughter and tears are mingled together in the stream of life. It was not for Ibsen to show this, but what a master he was, with profound psychology and deep grip on life, creator of men and especially of women. Agnes, Solveig, Nora, Elida, Hilda, Rita, Irene, do they not live, becoming of those immortals to whom we turn for solace of spirit? Great, grim Jotun of the Northland, born into the fever-stricken modern world, yearning for the companionship of the ice peaks, but doomed to the solitude of the cities, Ibsen, with all his pessimism, is wholly constructive in philosophy. He teaches that self-realization is neither in indulgence nor in renunciation, but in heroic action, accepting all the bonds of the spirit, that life to be worthwhile must be based on truth, lived in freedom, and crowned by love.
Ibsen, psychologist and critic of modern society, has been the subject of another program in the series titled Lives of Great Men, presented by Dr. Edward Howard Griggs, distinguished lecturer, critic, and author.
This is Orson Welles, speaking from London. The Black Museum. Here in the grim stone structure on the Thames, which houses Scotland Yard, is a warehouse of homicide. A warehouse where a parchment lampshade, an automobile tire, a canvas tarpaulin, an umbrella, all are touched by murder. Here's a dictionary. It's a familiar object. French into English, English into French. Every high school student knows what these books are like. Word here, phrase there, merci, thank you, merci. And of course, a use common to most young men in countries not their own.
Je t'aime. Je t'aime.
Oh, you sound so passionate, Jules. What does that mean?
In the little book, one moment, je t'aime, I love you.
Well, today the dictionary can be seen in the Black Museum.
From the annals of the Criminal Investigation Department of the London Police, we bring you the dramatic stories of the crimes recorded by the objects in Scotland Yard's Gallery of Death, the Black Museum.
Here we are in the Black Museum. Scotland Yard's Museum of Murder. Not a very pleasant place, but it's interesting. And here lies death. The people who conceived this place must have wished to raise a memorial for death. And here, collected under one roof, are the mementos of murder from over 100 years. Here's a dart, a feathered dart, made for pleasure, for laughter and friendly tavern. This tiny metal tip is dipped in cyanide. A twist of a wrist, flick of an elbow, a dart ordinance, spectator was scratched, was an accident. An accident, no, it was murder. Ah, here we are, the dictionary. You want the English for a French word? Here it is, or the French for a word in English. It's here also. Nice idea. Only one book, great convenience. Particularly for Jules Gamache, who had a bit of trouble expressing himself to Betty Brown on the beach in southern France. One warm
Je t'aime.
Oh, you sound so passionate, Jules. What's that mean?
In the little book, one moment. Je t'aime. Oui, I love you.
Right, Jules. And me, a married woman?
There it was. Love out of the dictionary in the summer in southern France. Of course, this was in 1923. That date's important simply because radio and broadcasting were just beginning. And Jules Gamache was something of an electrical engineer. In fact, he was the only man in a little French seaside town who was able to bring music out of the air.
Luc Galen, how you say in anglais? De Cat Whisker. So. Maintenant, mes chéris, écoutez.
Oh, Jules. Dat is weer English in funny rabbit ear mouth.
Huh?
Why, Jules, you are bright, aren't you?
I love you. I must have you now, today. Parbleu, always.
Oh, Jules.
A clever Frenchman who knew his way about with women. An Englishwoman vacationing in France. Why was she there?
Oh, Jules, if I were a better manager, it would be better to be in. But I'd never have had the breakdown. I'd never have come to France, and I'd never have met you, and even your wireless clip.
Oh, so that was it. But all such items come to an end someday. And summer comes to an end. At least that's the correct calculation. That's the way Betty calculated. Without thinking of her, Jules.
Jules?
Oui, ma chérie?
I have to go home.
Oui, je viens. I come also.
Oh, Jules, that's impossible.
However, the usual sighs and protestations, of course. It was just a brief interlude. Betty was a trifle saddened to let it go. After all, when a woman is crowding for this. She went home anyway to Sussex, to the Binnacle Inn, to security of sorts, and to her husband, Al.
Business hasn't been too bad while you were away, Bessie. All the rooms were let this week, and the bar trade was fine.
I dare say you did all right by the bar.
The landlord's got to be social, girl. Otherwise his customers go somewhere else.
There's a difference, Alf, between social and drunk.
Here, now, none of that. I'll take a drop now and then, but I don't get drunk. Well, another customer. Business is picking up, and on the hotel side at that.
Oh.
How can I help you,
sir? I have, how you say, one moment, please. I will find the word. Oui, I have come to stay.
What do you know? A froggy. Pleased to have you, monsieur. And may I ask how you found us?
Monsieur Brown, the merveilleuse Madame Brown is the recommendation for your so select hotel. Is it not so that we have met in Provence, Madame?
The little Frenchman must have been mad. Mad with love. Or just a little touched in the head. In any case, he'd come just as he said, to stay. As he explained it to Al Brown.
I am, how you say, an inventor. I have much great ideas.
Yes, sure, Gamache, sure. But do you make any money?
To make money? Je ne comprends pas.
Money, shillings, francs.
Ah, oui, beaucoup d'argent. Oh, right now I wait from Canada. Much money.
And what do you invent to get all this beaucoup money?
The wireless. I am in the wireless very much interested.
Well, monsieur, if you can get music out of the air, maybe you can get some money out of the same place to pay what you owe us.
Huh?
You've been here a month now, and we haven't seen a shilling on your board bill.
Vaudeville? Comment?
There was another conversation shortly thereafter on the same subject, if not exactly on the same light level.
Look, Bessie, he's your friend. We've got to have some money.
How can I ask him for money, even if he is our friend?
Yours, not mine. He doesn't take walks with me every afternoon.
Ask Brown, are you suggesting?
I'm not suggesting, dearie. I'm telling you. Get some money out of him or out he goes. You're supposed to be the business head in this family. All right. Tend to business here.
Well, you never talked to me like this before.
It was the first time for everything, they say. For the first time, Al was in the driver's seat, and he knew it. So did Betty know it. On one of their afternoon walks, she said as much to Jules.
Jules? Oui, ma chérie?
I suspect.
He will do nothing, jamais.
He's after me.
Huh?
To get money from you. What are you laughing at? I'm telling you, that would be real nasty. And he throws both out. And you without a penny. Well, it's not funny. He holds the whip hand. Don't you understand?
Oui, one moment.
Oh, Jules. Not that little book of James.
Oui, ça fait mon le petit livre. Ici, I have it. Like an Englishman, so... one may steal his wife, but not owe to him money.
Jules was self-confident, to say the least. He behaved as if he had a plan. He said to Al,
Never fear, mon ami. In a few days, beaucoup d'argent. You like? Oui?
To Betty, he said,
Je t'aime, ma chérie. Do not fear. All will be well.
A quiet, dull New Year's morning. The routine of the inn continued, minus the overtired, oversleeping maid. After a while, the master came grumbling down the stairs.
Bessie! Bessie, where are you?
Me. I think Mr. Gamache is dead.
Well, let him go to his room, then.
Pardon, monsieur? Into my chambre you wish for me to go? Oui?
Oh, no need for that. Is there, Al?
Oh, so long as he's awake, I don't care, one way or another. Where's my salt? You know I can't start a day without Miss Salt.
I know, dear. They're where you'd expect them to be, on the mantel shelf, in their regular place.
Oh, yes, I forgot. If I may disturb you, monsieur.
Oh, but of course. The chair before the fire. Very nice, oui? Très charmant. When it is so very cold outside.
Oh, thanks. Bessie, that glass is here. Where's a tablespoon and some water?
Oh, I'll get them for you. Just a moment, dear.
Jules Gamache stood in the bay window and watched the little domestic scene. Occasionally he riffled through his ever-present dictionary as if for a word to describe the events he was watching. Such inconsequential little events. Betty came trotting back from the kitchen with a tablespoon and a pitcher of water. She put them on the table alongside of salt and glass. Al measured his own dosage, poured it into the glass. Then he poured in the water. Almost mockingly, he raised his glass as if in a toast. The Frenchman standing nearby. Laying down the contents of the glass.
Oh, those salts taste bitter this morning?
Yeah, they are never sweet, no?
Nothing sweet about them.
Then why complain, dear? You had more to drink than usual last night, so the salts taste more bitter than usual.
1 hour later.
Betty, get some help. Oh, it's the cramps. Oh, I can't stand it. I can't stand it. It's awful.
Oh, Jules, get a doctor. Call the cook. Do something.
I will try. My English, it is not good. No, but I will try.
Oh, my feet ache. Oh, they're driving me crazy. The pain, and the itching. Oh.
Shortly thereafter, Alfie Brown was quite dead. And so the tragedy reached its climax. And playing its little part in that tragedy was a certain dictionary, which, as I told you, can be seen today in the Black Museum. Dr. Westcott, the local physician, was called at once, but far too late. Alf Brown was past help. The doctor listened gravely to the story as Betty told it to him, while Jules stood by, the very picture of solicitude.
Oh, we went so quick, Doctor. And it's such agony. Grabs, groans, and he said the strangest thing.
What was that, Mrs. Brown?
Well, he cried out with his feet were itching. It was almost loud, and he said...
Is that right, Mr. Mann? Oui, monsieur le docteur, ça avait raison. Huh? Well, if you say so, it's an interesting symptom. Peculiar one, particular poison. Though how this household will come by it, I haven't the slightest idea.
Poison? But, Doctor, it was his sauce. Although he did complain that they tasted more bitter than usual.
Anything else, Mrs. Brown?
No, nothing else. Oh, I'm so upset. Confused. But what poison? How?
Itching feet, bitter taste, great pain, or do they all point to strychnine? But, of course, we won't be able to know for certain until there's been a post-mortem.
Oh, Doctor, why?
Well, I can't sign a certificate under these circumstances. I have to notify the coroner and the police.
Oh.
Now, I think our next precaution is for you to give me the bottle, the spoon, and the glass into my charge. Where are they?
Oh, well, I don't quite... Mr. Gamache, do you remember?
Je ne sais pas, madame. Je ne comprends pas. Oh, come, Mrs. Brown. Now, pull yourself together. You want to catch the party who poisoned your husband, don't you?
Perhaps there was a better question than Dr. Westcott realized. It was pure rhetoric at that moment, as far as he was concerned. Of course, the widow wanted to catch the murderer. Still, took a bit of concentrated prodding of Betty's memory until she said,
I know now, Doctor. I put them in the drawer of the kitchen table when I left poor Alfie for a moment to fetch some tea and soda. I thought it might help.
They found the bottle and the glass and the spoon in the kitchen table drawer. The doctor looked at them closely.
Someone's washed these thoroughly. There are still traces of water in the bottle and the glass. Mrs. Brown, I'm going to the police at once.
And Dr. Westcott went to the local police. The local police went to Scotland Yard. Betty Brown went to Jules Gamache.
You did it, Jules. I don't know how, but you did it.
Moi? Ma chérie, ma foi, impossible.
You did. You killed Alfred, and you stayed right there and watched him die.
Betty, you are most... how is it? Oui, you are most hysterical. You know I do not kill your Alfie. You must know this.
I know. I feel it in my bones. You killed him. Go away, Jules. Go away. I never want to see you again as long as I live.
Sadly, as if overwhelmed by the unpredictability of women, Jules Gamache packed his things and left the Binnacle Inn. But he didn't go far. Just to the next village and the next inn, where he waited and watched. Waited to hear from his beloved, now widowed, his Betty. Waited for development in the case which the coroner's jury had labeled death at the hands of person or persons unknown. The developments were not long in coming.
My name is West, Mrs. Brown, Inspector West, Scotland Yard. And my credentials.
Yes, sir.
I have a few questions, particularly concerning the disposal of the poison.
I'll try to answer them, Inspector.
Do you know who washed out the bottle and glass?
No, I'm afraid I don't. I left them in the kitchen. We were all so upset by poor Alfie's suffering. We were rather hysterical, I'm afraid.
I understand. No idea on that. I see. Tell me, Mrs. Brown, have you ever used any kind of weed killer in the garden of this inn?
No, sir. Not that I know of.
Poison for rodents, rats, mice, and so on?
No, sir. We've never been troubled by such.
Have you any idea who might have wanted to kill your husband, Mrs. Brown?
No, I haven't.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Brown. If I could...
The inspector left the front of the house, so to speak, and visited below stairs. He had a nice talk with the cook over a cup of tea.
Mrs. Davis, did you wash out the salts bottle?
No, why should I? I've got enough work. And that was New Year's Day. The maid didn't come in. I had to clean up, too. Pity, not much of a New Year in this house.
Did you notice the bottle at all?
Well, I remember saying to Mrs. Brown that there wasn't much more than a tablespoon left in it. And perhaps she'd better order another bottle in case Mr. Brown was getting mad if he had none.
Now, this is important, Mrs. Davis. Can you place anyone at all, in this kitchen between the time Mrs. Brown brought the bottle in here and the time Dr. Westcott took it away?
No one but the Frenchman, sir.
Mr. Gamesh.
I seem to remember, sir. I wouldn't want to get him in no trouble unless he deserved it. But he did come in here and jabber at me, and then he used his little book.
Little book?
He's got a dictionary, looks up the French and finds the English. Right comical he is sometimes.
I see. Then he looked in his dictionary.
And he said bottle. He said something else. I didn't pay much attention. I just pointed at the kitchen drawer.
Did he take the bottle out of the drawer?
I wouldn't know, sir. For all I know, he just wanted to be sure it was in a safe place. I heard him open and close the drawer, that was all. Then he went out.
Did he have a chance to put it back?
Lots of chances. I was that busy running in and out.
That's too bad. Oh, excellent tea, Mrs. Davis.
The inspector was never a man to accept loose ends. He ran all his leads to earth. This is the approach which brought him finally to where Jules Gamache was staying.
Do you accuse me, Inspector? Merely asking routine questions, Mr. Gamache. Did you have any reason to dislike or resent Mr. Brown? None. No, but of course not. Have you ever had any strychnine in your possession? No, but pourquoi? Why should I? I can't say, sir. I can only try to fill in the blank spaces. Someone, you see, gave Mr. Brown the opportunity to poison himself. That kind of gift is murder, Mr. Gamache. Naturellement. I'm afraid I must ask you to remain in England, sir, until the case is closed. But for me, this will be a pleasure. I assure you, Inspector, I wish to see vengeance on this murderer. I loved Mr. Brown almost as a brother.
So there it was, a smooth, blank wall for Scotland Yard to face and search for some crack somewhere. The interest in the case simmered down. Nothing was happening. Then the newspapers picked up a lead, something so fantastic, the men assigned to watch the Binnacle Inn in its neighborhood hardly believed their own ears. It seems that Jules Gamache began to write letters. And to the police.
There is one suspect who has not been questioned. A man long subject to Alfred Brown's whims and temper. The pot washer at the inn, known to me only as Georges. I point the finger of suspicion. Observe, gentlemen of Scotland Yard, the comings and goings of Monsieur Arthur Brookfield, solicitor to Madame Brown. This man is in and out of her residence at all hours. Certainly not all of this can be on business.
Was jealousy entering the picture now? The letters aroused a good deal of attention once they leaked to the newspapers, as such things have a way of doing. Jules Gamache was quite pleased when the reporters swarmed about him, the photographers took his picture. Many times, in many poses. This was fame, at last, for an impoverished inventor living on his wits.
Come in, sir. You asked to see me on the Brown case. Yes, sir. My name is Scott, sir. I'm the owner of a chemist's shop in Woking. Not too far from the Binnacle Inn, is it? Just far enough to miss some of the news, but this morning I saw this newspaper. Ah, yes, our French friend. Do you know him? He was a customer of mine a few weeks back, just before Christmas. Go on, Mr. Scott. He asked for
strychnine.
Oh, what excuse did he give?
Oh, something about experiments in the wireless. He kept consulting a small English-French dictionary to express himself.
The wireless, yes, that's the new excuse. Although why they should think the wireless operations entail the use of poisons is beyond me. Did you sell him any?
I did. I made him sign the poison book. The name he used was Hatch.
Mr. Scott, do you think you can identify this man among a dozen others? Well, Mr. Scott?
That's he, sir. The short fellow with the bright black eyes.
Thank you, mister.
Monsieur le chemiste. Bonjour, c'est un plaisir. How you say, 1 moment, please. Oui, ici. It is a pleasure that we meet again.
Jules Gamesh, I have a warrant for your arrest on a charge of willful murder. I must warn you that anything you may say...
Well, that's the story. And today, the dictionary which played its part in that story can be found in its place in the Black Museum.
Orson Welles will be back with you in just a moment.
Truly a strange, impassioned little man, that Jules Gamache. He's half crazy, half sane. You wonder about him. And you know, to add to the dilemma of his personality, here's one last point. While Jules was awaiting execution, he wrote another letter to Inspector West, stating that shortly after the death of Al Brown, he, Jules, saw a woman. Whether the woman was the cook or his beloved Betty, he didn't know, secrete something behind some loose bricks in the garden wall at the Binnacle Inn. Of course, the police investigated. They found 2 small jugs, one with crystalline strychnine in it, and the other with a solution of the same poison. Now, the question is, did Jules Gamache put those jugs there himself, or did one of the women? And if the latter, why did Gamache wait until just before his death to reveal this? Was it some odd form of gallantry? Well, I guess no one will ever know. And now until next time, till we meet in the same place and I tell you another story about the Black Museum, I remain as always obediently yours.
This is WDCB-FM, Glen Ellen.
In just a moment, you'll hear James Stewart as the six-shooter, just one of the many great stars brought to you Sundays on NBC. Every Sunday, hear Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy in The Marriage, Sir Laurence Olivier on Theatre Royal, Lawrence Tibbett with the Golden Voices, Helen Hayes, Frederick March, Rex Harrison, and Lily Palmer on the NBC Star Playhouse. All of them heard only on NBC. James Stewart as the six-shooter. The man in the saddle is angular and long-legged. His skin is sun-dyed brown. The gun in his holster is gray steel and rainbow mother-of-pearl, its handle unmarked. People call them both the six-shooter. The NBC Radio Network presents James Stewart as the six-shooter, a transcribed series of radio dramas based on the life of Britt Ponsett, the Texas plainsman who wandered through the Western Territories, leaving behind a trail of still remembered legends. Now, in just a moment, immediately following this important announcement, you'll hear Act One of The Six-Shooter. Meet the safe driver. If you know what makes him stay alive on the highways, you may be able to follow his good example. He always keeps his car in A1 mechanical condition. He shows courtesy for other drivers. He knows that speed is his greatest enemy. And most important, he knows and obeys the laws. Remember, few accidents happen with safe drivers. Are you one of them? Now, Act 1 of The Six Shooter, starring James Stewart.
I hadn't seen Mary and Dan for pretty near 3 years, not since they left the Panhandle. So I figured as long as I was riding up through the Platte River country, I might as well swing out on my way a piece and look in on them. You know, we'd been real good friends for a long time. It was kind of like going home. And the closer I got, the more I kept thinking back, remembering, kind of daydreaming. You know, riding across prairie flat sort of does that to you. Your horse, he kind of finds his own trail mostly, and you just slouch easy-like in the saddle and listen to the hoofbeats, steady, regular. Things you haven't thought about for years sneak into your head. Anyhow, I still had a day to go, and I was watching out for a good spot to bed down when I saw this campfire up ahead. Well, the way I figure, human beings are always better company than coyotes, so I gave Scar a flick with the reins and headed up toward it. Whoa, easy now, boy. There we are. Easy. Ah, howdy.
Hiya.
You'd rather camp private?
Well, climb down. Pour yourself some Java.
Oh, thanks. Easy, boy. Whoa. Gee whiz, that smells good.
Yeah.
You, any notion about how far it is Walnut Creek?
20 miles or so, I reckon. That where you're going?
Yeah, I was stopping over there. A couple of friends there I haven't seen in quite a while.
Uh-huh. Yeah, a fellow there I ain't seen for a while, neither.
That's all. Hey, by George, there's good coffee.
Yeah, I've been hunting him for over 3 years. Finally located him. I'm going to kill him.
Uh-huh. How come?
He murdered my kid brother 4 years ago in Laredo. Shot him down in the street.
Yeah. Well, another killing won't bring him back.
Oh, nothing will bring him back. And after I killed Dan Mailer, nothing will bring him back neither.
Dan Mailer?
That's right, Ponce.
Huh?
Yeah, I knew who you was. As soon as you rode up to that fire and I got a look at that gun of yours. Britt Ponce. The fellow they call the six-shooter.
Well, you must have known I was a friend of Dan's. How come you told me all this?
Well, I figure you'll warn him. And that's fine with me. I want him to know. Have time to get scared, you know, maybe try to run away. I like it if he runs a while first. I'll catch up with him. You tell him that, Ponce. You tell him Red Lawson's coming to kill him. And there's nothing he can do about it.
Well, thanks for the coffee. Easy, boy. Now, Lawson, I reckon Dan won't run. I'll be seeing you. Come on, boy. Come on. That's the trouble with the past. It wasn't only good things in it. It got some bad ones, too. And one of the bad ones was reaching out for Dan and Mary. I didn't know this fellow Lawson. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I did know Dan. And I knew if he'd killed somebody back there in Texas, it hadn't been murder. It was long about middle of forenoon when I rode up the dirt road between the rows of cottonwoods, turned into the yard. Old hound dog came charging around the side of the house, sounding a lot meaner than he looked. Whoa, boy. Whoa, Scar. Here now. Now quit it. Yeah, you don't want to bite anybody. Nice fella. Go on, tell him you got company. Go on, boy. Go on. Go on. The place had a good feel to it. Quiet, peaceful. And then I remembered Lawson.
Britt,
I just can't believe it.
Hiya, Mary. Gee, it's been a long time, hasn't it?
Dan, come on up and see who's here. Hurry. He's been working in the barn fixing up one of the plows. How are you?
Hey, you haven't changed a bit, Mary, unless you're a little prettier than Mary.
Oh, you're...
Hiya, Dan.
Son of a gun. Oh, you stayed away too long.
Well, things came up, Dan. You know how it is.
Yeah.
You're sure looking good, both of
Oh,
you.
feeling good, too.
Settling down is what does it, Britt.
Yeah, she took a good saddle man and turned him into a poor plowman. What do you think of that?
That's not true, Dan. We've got the best stand of corn west of the Omaha. What's really great, though, Britt, is peace.
Peace.
No more gunfighting, or range wars. Never knowing whether Dan would come home sitting up in his saddle or tied onto it. That's all in the past now. Why, Dan doesn't even wear a gun anymore. And that's the way I want it, Britt. It's the kind of life I want from... Oh, have we got a surprise for you?
Oh, well, you know, I... Kind of hard to surprise, you know. You remember?
That's what you think. Come on inside. Now, don't you tell him, Dan. Oh, you'll see, Britt.
Let's see. What, could one of those newfangled player pianos, is that it?
Oh, no, a piano. That's the most ridiculous guess I ever heard of.
Well, it sure couldn't be anything that
Look.
Well, I'll be darned. I'll be doggone. It's a baby. Well, which kind is it, Mary?
Not it. He. That's
Oh.
young Britt. He'll be a year and a half old next month.
That name was Mary's idea, Britt. I sure wouldn't have wished it on him.
Well, I'll be doggone.
Oh, he's all upset. Hasn't had his nap out. Rich will have to look him over later. You and Dan go on outside now and let me quiet him down.
Oh, sure, Mary. I can't have my namesake all upset.
Are you hungry, Britt?
Oh, I'm always hungry. You know that, Mary.
Good. Got some buttermilk cornbread in the oven. Be ready in a minute.
You know, Britt, Mary is right. This is a good life. I never thought I'd settle down and like it, but I sure have done it.
Yeah, Dan. I guess Mary can't hear us out here, can she?
No, she can't hear us. Why, what's the matter, Britt?
I met a fellow on the trail last night, Dan. Name's Red Lawson.
Lawson?
Says you shot his brother in Laredo about 4 years ago.
Lawson. Kurt Lawson. Yep. Yeah, I did, Britt. He was one of the Bracken gang, that bunch of rustlers that pulled an ambush on me when I was working for the Circle J ranch. Well, I guess I better dig out the shooting irons and go after him.
No, wait a minute, Dan.
Wait, nothing. He's probably holed up in town. The odds will be better if I go after him instead of waiting for him to come to me.
Yeah, but what about Mary?
Well, that's just it. If I catch him in town, it'll keep him from coming out here. What about her, Britt? What do you mean?
Well, she's happy now, Dan. She figures this kind of thing is all over and done with.
Well, she'll sure find out different if he comes out here gunning for me.
Well, maybe he won't, though. Maybe, Dan, maybe I can do something.
Britt, I've always fought my own battles.
But you've got Mary now. You've got the baby.
And you're a lot faster with a gun than I am. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, Dan. There are just other answers besides killing, that's all. Or maybe we can find one. Anyway, we can try, can't we? I saddled up Scar a bit early the next morning and rode into town alone. Figured I'd have a talk with the sheriff. After all, this was his job when you come right down to it. Well, he wasn't in his office at the county jail. He was out of town for the next 3 days. So I walked down the main street trying to figure out what to do. This wasn't much of a town. Walnut Creek, there's a couple of blocks of clapboard buildings, a boardwalk along the front of them, sheet iron awnings up over, and nothing much stirring but the dogs. Sleepy, quiet, real nice and peaceful. For everybody except me.
Britt!
Huh? Oh, Mary.
Oh, no now. Oh. Well, you were certainly an early bird this morning.
Well, Mary, does Dan know you came into town by yourself?
Well, I don't know, Britt. I come in alone every day or two. Why shouldn't I? something wrong, Britt?
No. I just wondered, that's all.
Actually, I think he was too busy to notice I'd left. You know what he was doing? Cleaning his guns. You're a bad influence, Britt.
Well,
I think you've started him thinking about things...
Well, Ponset, how about it? You give him my message?
Lawson. Mary, I'll see you later, huh?
Well, all right, Britt.
Oh, now, there ain't no need of the lady.
No.
Like that.
Goodbye, Mary. I'll see you later, huh?
Well, all right, Britt. If you say so. Giddy up. Come on.
Mary, huh? Dan's wife, maybe. I hear he's got a kid, too.
Yeah, maybe you hear too much, Lawson. And talk too much, too. Maybe you don't ride enough.
Oh, I'll ride when I'm through here. When I get even.
Yeah, but Dan told me about that. Your brother tried to ambush him. He was in with that Bracken gang.
That don't make no difference to me. He was my brother. Dan Mailer was in my place. He might feel the same way. Maybe I'll give him a chance to feel the same way. Now that I know he's got a wife, a kid.
Now, Lawson, if you touch Mary...
Yeah, I know. I know all that. But once I've done what I come here to do, I don't care what happens afterwards. You, Dan Mailer, can't make no move until I do. You see how it stacks up, Ponce? I got all the cards.
He turned his back and he walked off down the street, and I stood there watching him go, knowing he was right. He did have all the cards. There was only one thing in the world he wanted: revenge. And he didn't care what it cost to get it, even his life. Dan and I couldn't move first, and afterwards it'd be too late.
We'll return to James Stewart as the six-shooter in just a moment. When it's entertainment you're after, you'll find the very best on this station of the NBC Radio Network. Thursday night, for example, you'll hear Robert Young, Roy Rogers, Ralph Edwards, and Eddie Cantor, each with a great program for your listening pleasure. Robert Young on Father Knows Best, a program based on the assumption that the man of the family can put one over on the wife and youngsters. And Truth or Consequences with Ralph Edwards. When Ralph sends a contestant off on a consequence, it usually ends up as one of radio's funniest stunts. And if you like Western songs and adventures, you'll find none better than the ones you hear on the Roy Rogers Show. Then, to top it all off, hear the little-known stories of show business that Eddie Cantor tells on Show Business Show, each Thursday on the NBC Radio Network. Now, Act Two of The Six-Shooter, starring James Stewart as Britt Ponset.
I found Mary finally at the general store, and I stayed with her while she bought some things, and we headed back for the farm. Just like a woman, she was curious about the fellow I'd stopped to talk with, wondered why I hadn't introduced her. I had a real hard time stalling her off, but I managed to. With Dan, it was different. Dan? Are you in there, Dan?
Yeah, come on in, Britt. Been cleaning my guns.
Oh, forget it, Dan. There are better ways.
Yeah? You got one figured?
No, not yet. I saw Lawson in town a while ago, Dan.
Oh? You talked to him any?
Yes, I talked to him. I reckon you better stay close to Mary and the boy.
Why? What do you mean? What do you mean, Britt? Did he say anything?
No, not exactly. He saw Mary in town.
Was that dirty?
No, I didn't let him talk to her, Dan. She wondered about it, though. She'll probably ask you later.
That settles it, then. I hadn't even thought of that side of it. Britt, I'm going after him.
You wouldn't have a chance, Dan.
You're selling me kind of short, ain't you?
No, I don't mean it that way. Lawson wouldn't draw even if you called him. That's not what he's after, don't you see? You'd have to kill him in cold blood, and I don't think you could do that, Dan.
No, I couldn't. Not even Lawson. What are we going to do, Britt?
We waited and watched. The day passed, no sign of Lawson, nothing happened. But instead of feeling easier, we just got more keyed up. Mary didn't seem to catch on anything was wrong. And then supper was over and the night started to come on, and we just sat around talking while Mary got the baby off to sleep, singing to him and rocking him. The katydid start chirping close. Way off toward the hills, the coyotes took up and answered them. Inside it was sort of quiet and gentle.
I think he's finally drifted off.
Yeah, he looks sound asleep.
Just look at him lying there, completely helpless and so lovable you could just eat him up.
Well, I suppose he'll get himself some hair and teeth someday. Maybe look a little more human then.
Dan, that's a fine way to talk about your own son.
That's when I heard it. Sound outside. A horse stamped just one or two times, like somebody was holding too tight a rein on him. Scar and Dan's stock were all in the corral over next to the barn. This was right up close to the house. I didn't let on to Mary or Dan.
What's the matter, Britt? You getting restless?
No, it's too many years on the trail, I guess. I think maybe I'll amble outside. I get a little fresh air.
Well, watch out for the coyotes, Britt. They're growing big around here. Dangerous, too.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on it. Coming out of the light that way, I was blind as a bat. I stopped on the porch. I waited a minute so I could get used to the dark. And I stood there listening to the sounds coming out of the night. The katydids, the coyotes. Then I heard it again. I moved around the corner of the house. It was all quiet. No sign of anybody. I drew fast and fired at the flag. Then I could hear a horse getting away.
Rich, you all right?
Yeah, Dan. I lost him. He got away.
What in the name of heaven were you trying to do?
You all right, Mary?
Small thanks to you if I am. That first shot didn't miss me or the baby by more than 6 inches.
Well, I'm sorry, Mary. There was a coyote out there, and I didn't realize...
Didn't realize, you fool. You might have killed us both, and you didn't realize.
Stop it, Mary. Britt was...
No, she's right, Dan. It's my fault. I just didn't think, that's all.
Britt, I think you've worn a gun so long it's beginning to affect your mind.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Look, I think maybe I'll ride into town for a while, if nobody minds. I'm awful sorry, Mary. I'll see you later.
I ought to go with him, Mary.
Why? After a fool trick like that, he ought to be alone. Nobody should be around him. It isn't safe to be.
Oh, you don't understand, Mary. You just don't... Well, let's go back in the house.
Yeah.
What?
Let's all go back in.
Dad.
Lost.
Why, you...
Easy, Mailer. You see how it is. Gun ain't pointed at you. One crazy move and your wife will get it. All right. Let's all go inside. Go on, move. Well, a nice place. Yes, sir. Real nice place. Got a storeroom over there? Mailer.
Yes.
All right. Get inside, both of you. I said get inside.
Come on, Mary.
Ah. That ought to hold you. Huh? Now.
Too much of a start on me to catch up to him. After a while, I stopped. Close car. Whoa, boy. Hold up here. Oh. I could hear him up front. I could hear him. I've heard a lot of horses on the trail. Enough of them to know that this one had an empty saddle on him. I read Lawson hadn't left that farm at all. Come on, boy. Come on, Scar. Lawson could be anywhere around here. Dan? Where's this? Where's that? Dan? What? Oh, the storeroom. Oh, all right, just a second. Wait till I get this. I'll try and get this door open.
Where is he?
There's nobody here, Dan.
The baby.
What?
Where's the baby?
I don't know. Dan.
Lawson was here, waited for you to leave, and locked us up. He kept coming over to the storeroom door, telling us what he was going to
He
do.
said he'd burn the house, all kinds of
He
things.
couldn't have got away. He was here just a minute ago.
And he has the baby.
Rich.
Wait a minute. He's got to come over here to the barn to get the horse. Grab your gun. Come on, Dan.
Stay here, Mary. Don't come out of the house.
He's got the baby. This won't be easy.
I know. I can figure why he waited. He had all of us. I can't figure it.
Yes, he's waited 3 years. He just wanted to enjoy it, that's all. All right, come on. We better separate. No use making it easy for him.
Right, Britt.
Hold it.
Right where you are.
The moon came out from behind the cloud. I could see him now, standing right in the barn door, right in the open, like he wasn't afraid of anything. And then I saw why he wasn't afraid. He was holding a gun in his hand, not pointing it at us, though. It was aimed at a little bundle squirming in the hay behind him.
I reckon you can see how things stand. One movement's all over for the kid. All right, Mailer. Drop your gun.
I'm the one you're after, Lawson. All right, you got me. How about leaving Mary and the baby out of it? I killed your brother. They didn't.
Hey, you'd miss him, though, wouldn't you? I guess you'd miss him real bad.
Why, you...
Hey. Careful, mate.
Dan just stood there, helpless. His hands up in the air. The moon was out full now. I knew I could get a clear sight on Lawson, but I didn't dare to draw on fire. He'd still have time to jerk that trigger. The gun muzzle was about 3 inches from the baby's head.
All right, Ponce. Move on over next to Mailer. I want you both where I can see you. Go on, move.
I walked over and stood beside Dan.
4 years, Mailer. 4 years I've been dreaming about this. Now it's even better than I thought. I didn't know you'd have a family. I didn't know I'd get the 6-shooter along with you.
It's our fight, Lawson. Why don't you leave the rest of them out of it?
I had a brother once. 4 for 1 makes a pretty fair payoff.
I kept watching his gun. It was the only chance. If it swerved for 1 second, I'd make a play, but it didn't swerve. And the time was running out. And then I caught something from the corner of my eye, just the bare flicker of it. It was over at the side of the house. It was Mary. I made my draw. Lawson! Here!
Why, you...
You dropped him, Britt.
Now, make sure, Dan. I know, we've got to make sure. Oh. Is that sure enough for you? Yeah.
The baby. Is he all right?
Yeah, he's all right, Mary.
Oh, thank heaven.
Mary, if anybody had told me that you could do what you just did,
Here now.
I don't
Come to Mother. You mean after the way I've always felt about guns? And after you tried to keep all this from me?
Well,
Dan told me all about it when we were locked in the storeroom. Oh, there now, darling. It's all right now. Britt, I saw what was happening out here, and I remembered the rifle, and, well, after all, I mean, there was nothing else to do. All right now, darling. All right.
About 3 days later, I said goodbye. But I knew I'd be coming back that way someday. Dan and Mary aren't just the kind of friends a man forgets. Dan is a tough cowpoke from the range country, all settled down and liking it. And that Mary, she was gentle and sweet and firing at a killer to save her baby's life. And that baby, naming him Brett the way they done, that gives you kind of a funny feeling having a baby named after you. Kind of a good feeling. I figured I'd probably be telling the boys all about that when I got to Wyoming.
The truce in Korea doesn't mean we should stop writing letters to our men and women in service. Mail from home is just as important now as it ever was. In some respects, it's even more important. The action, the strain, the anxieties of war can keep a soldier's mind occupied. But when the letdown comes, the time to relax, that's when morale needs a shot in the arm. Your soldier knows the shooting is over. He's done his big job, and now he wants to get home. But unfortunately, there's still a lot to keep him for a while. So don't let him down. Help keep up his morale. Write that letter today.
Whitehall, 1212.
This is Scotland Yard.
For the first time in history, Scotland Yard opens its official files to bring you the true story of some of its most baffling cases.
These are the true stories. The plain, unvarnished facts, just as they occurred, reenacted for you by an all-British cast. Only the names of the participants have, for obvious reasons, been changed. The broadcasts are presented with the full cooperation of Scotland Yard.
The search for Whitehall 1212 is from Percy Hoskins of the London Daily Express. The stories for radio are written and directed by Willis Cooper. You will now hear the voice of Chief Superintendent John Davidson, who is custodian of the famous Black Museum of Scotland Yard.
Many of the objects on exhibit here in the Black Museum, as you undoubtedly know, are weapons of murder. They're not always knives, bludgeons, and guns. Murder is done with a great variety of instruments never intended for that unpleasant task. These wrinkled sheets of what appears to be black blotting paper have been responsible for a great many deaths. In fact, they were manufactured for that purpose and sold openly years ago. It's true that most of the deaths these papers caused were perfectly legal, in fact, to be desired. But these particular ones figured in a case of most revolting murder. You see, these are old-fashioned flypapers. Once they were impregnated with arsenic, soaked in water and left standing about in a saucer, they furnished a working solution of pure arsenic. The flies who sipped it found their way at once through the pearly gates. So did any unwary pets who sampled it and some careless people. On the 20th of September, 1911, a rather shabby fat man called on Inspector Oliver Peters at his office in New Scotland Yard.
My name is Pete Van House, Inspector. I live in Finsbury Park.
Finsbury Park, let me think. That's near Holloway Prison.
It's just beyond Holloway Road, yes, sir.
Yes. Well, what brings you here, sir?
Well, sir, to put it quite plainly, my aunt is dead.
I'm sorry to hear that, Mr.
Van House, sir. Pete Van House.
I'm sorry to hear about your aunt, sir. But to what...
My aunt was not... how shall I say it?
I'm sure I don't know, Mr. Van House. Say what?
Well, I mean she was not very nice.
Oh.
I'll be perfectly frank with you, Inspector Peters. May I sit down?
By all means, sir.
Thank you. My aunt had money.
Oh.
Oh, no, not a great deal, I suppose, in some ways, but quite a good sum. And what I have always expected would be my share one day. Considerable sum to me, you see.
And you didn't get it?
No, I didn't. Of only me and my wife. Naturally, we expect to... She lived with us.
When she died?
Well, no. I must admit we quarreled once in a while.
I see.
Oh, no, you don't see. I mean, that wasn't it. Although we haven't seen her for nearly a year, still.
Blood is thicker than water, you're going to say?
Exactly. I couldn't have put it better myself. Blood is thicker than water. That's what I always tell my wife.
You said your aunt wasn't living with you.
No, she'd gone to live with the family in Tollington Park. That's a street, Tollington Park, in Finsbury Park. Only a little way from where my wife and I live.
That's where your aunt died?
Yeah, that's where she died. In this fellow's house, and then I wasn't even told about it till after she was dead and buried. I was the only living relation, and I expected...
And you weren't mentioned in the will at all?
Oh, yes, I was mentioned in the will. Oh, yes. Yes, I was in it.
Well, then I don't understand.
I was left £10. And I didn't even get that. I
well,
don't
Mr.
think
Van
that...
Hals, I'm sorry.
And
but
£10 was all the money she had left.
What?
That was all the money she had, I tell you.
Where was the rest of it?
He had it.
Who?
This Simons, this man who... Her landlord, the fellow who owns the place where she was living.
How did he get it?
I don't know. But he had it. He still got it. That's not all. She left me £10,
yes?
But he showed me where he'd spent £11, 10 shillings, 10 halfpenny for her funeral expenses. £1 and 1 shilling and 10 halfpenny more than my paltry legacy.
Well?
And since I was next of kin, I had to pay it. So my rich aunt dies, and I am out 30 shillings.
30 shillings and a halfpenny.
What do you think of that, sir?
Well, Mr. Van Hals, I'm dreadfully sorry for you.
But can't you do anything about it?
How do you know he's got the rest of her money?
Why, he showed me the papers.
Oh.
Looks legal to me, but I'm sure it's not. Look here, Inspector, I don't want it all. I want only my share, but as the sole surviving relative, well, it was a lot of money.
Was it?
Well, £4,000 isn't tram fare, Inspector.
£4,000?
£4,000.
Well, my best advice to you, Mr. Van Hals, is to consult a solicitor.
Solicitor?
You need to have someone look at those papers you spoke about. You're sure they were signed by your aunt?
Why do you think I came to Scotland Yard, Inspector?
Well, now.
My aunt, may the Lord rest her poor soul, had a fine marble tomb she bought for herself in Highgate. Paid £700 for it. She always talked about being placed in it when she passed away.
And?
This fellow Simons, he knew about it. My aunt was always talking about her last resting place. He knew about it all right. You know what he did?
I'm sure I don't.
He had her buried... I didn't even know she was dead. He had her buried in a common grave in Islington with 8 other bodies.
Well...
But don't you know murderers do that?
That was no basis for an accusation of murder, of course. But the circumstances did warrant an investigation, Inspector Peters thought. So he paid a visit to Bertram Simons, the man who had been Miss Hogg's landlord. That was the aunt's name, Miss Hogg, Miss Winifred Hogg. Mr. Simons, the landlord, was a businessman.
Yes, Miss Winifred Hogg rented the second floor of my house here some 11 months ago. I'd be glad to answer any questions about her and our business relations, any I deem proper, sir. Your name is Peters, sir?
Inspector Peters, yes, sir.
Who sent you here?
I was not sent here by anyone, Mr. Simons. I came here in the course of my duties as a member of the Criminal Investigation Department.
Have a chair.
Thank you.
Now, what would you like to know about Miss Hogg?
Well, sir, with your permission...
Did Van Hals send you here?
I think I told you, sir, that nobody sent me here.
Oh, yes, that's right. But Van Hals has been complaining to you about me, hasn't he?
Mr. Van Hals has spoken to me, sir, yes. I would like to...
What did he say?
I don't think that...
Oh, yes, it has. He's accusing me. I've met our Mr. Van Hals, Inspector.
May I ask you a few questions, Mr. Simons?
He's disappointed.
May I ask you...
You may ask any questions you wish.
Well, then...
I'll answer the ones I feel are proper. I've said this woman lived in my house for 11 months. I can give you the exact period.
I don't want...
11 months. Less 1, 2, 4, 6 days to the time she died. Her weekly rent for the entire second floor of this house was 15 shillings and sixpence, which I think was extraordinarily cheap. Don't you? Now, what else?
You had other financial arrangements with Miss Hogg, I understand?
I did.
Would you care to say anything about them, sir?
I don't think it's any of your business. But I see no reason whatever. It's purely a business arrangement. I'm a businessman, Inspector.
I'm sure you are, sir.
Miss Hogg was, let me say, suspicious of the finances of the present government. The Lloyd George budget, for example, caused a great deal of trepidation.
A great many people seem to share that trepidation.
I'm sure I don't, sir. I've never had cause to fear for the soundness of the British Empire.
I wasn't suggesting...
She suggested to me that she would be willing to turn over to me such bonds, securities, and monies as she possessed.
She did?
Yes. What she wanted was security. Freedom from worry, she said. She asked me if I'd be willing to pay her an annuity for life in return for what monies and securities she possessed.
And you agreed?
I did that, and she made over all her assets to me. I'll show you the papers.
Yes, but...
Is anything wrong, Inspector?
I don't seem to find a record of your agreement to pay her this annuity you speak of.
£3 a week. Let me see. I was sure I had it. Yes, but... But what?
These seem to be your records of payment to Miss Hogg.
Well, that's what they are. 10, 15, 20, 30 weeks at £3 per week until the 8th of September, the day she died.
I don't see any record of her having received the payments, Mr. Simons. And is there a record of the whole transaction? I mean, a signed agreement between you two?
There is not. Miss Hogg didn't wish to have any further agreements in writing, about the matter of the... I think she didn't wish other people to know she was receiving an annuity.
This is most extraordinary, Mr. Simons.
It is, isn't it?
Yes.
Miss Hogg was not very much of a businesswoman, you see.
Obviously she was not. But you're a businessman, aren't you, Mr. Simons?
There's nothing wrong about that.
Well, these appear to be in legal form. But I'm not prepared to say what Mr. Van Hals or a court of equity would be likely to say to it.
It's legal, all right.
What about Miss Hogg's will, then?
I have several copies typed up. I was a witness to it. Yes. Yes, here's the will.
Yes, it's essentially what Mr. Van Hals said. He was bequeathed the sum of £10 by his aunt.
£10, yes.
I see.
And here's the undertaker's bill. £11, 10 shillings and 10 halfpenny. I advanced this amount to the undertaker.
Leaving Mr. Van Hals in your debt in the sum of 31 shillings and a halfpenny.
He paid me.
Yes. What's this?
Oh, that's the undertaker's original bill. Signed paid by him. Yes.
That's what I'm looking at. What's this item? Remitted to Mr. Simons, £1, 1 shilling. F. Anderson.
That's the undertaker's signature.
No. The item.
Oh, commission.
Commission?
10%. I gave him the business. He paid me for it.
You made a profit?
Yes.
On the funeral?
Of course. What's wrong with that? I'm a businessman.
Yes. Why did you have Miss Hogg buried in a common grave, Mr. Simons? Because it was cheaper?
Partly, yes. But did you see her death certificate? Of course not. Let me show it to you.
What about the tomb she owned in Highgate? Why wasn't she buried there?
Look at the death certificate, Inspector. See here? Cause of death? Epidemic diarrhea. Epidemic diarrhea, sir, is a contagious disease. Isn't it better to bury that kind of a corpse in a grave with half a dozen other victims of the same and not risk passing the disease on to healthy people? Answer me that, sir.
Well?
I'm not a fool, Inspector. You're too squeamish, young man. You think I'm a heartless person because I'm not ashamed to take my profit, don't you? Well, that's your opinion. But I assure you, sir, that I'm not a fool. Not by any manner of means, Inspector, I'm not a fool. Now, is there anything else you want to know?
You can't prove anything by an interview like that. Some of us oldsters here at Scotland Yard say there are people who can smell a crime. Inspector Oliver Peters was that kind of man. It took an extraordinary amount of sniffing, though, before his nose pointed in the right direction. I suppose it was Van House who gave him the suggestion. He came into Peters' office to inquire what had occurred, and Peters told him.
I don't like it at all, Van House.
I can't say anything at all, sir, but I believe he treated my aunt very badly. I don't know what he did to her,
What's
but...
that?
Well, when I was at his house there in Islington, the day before I came to see you...
Yes?
Well, I saw the room she lived in. He showed it to me.
Nice room?
It was filthy.
It was.
I don't believe he took any care of her at all. Flies...
Well, a sick room. Though flypaper's cheap enough.
Well, there were saucers in the room with fly papers in them. 3 or 4 of them. But all the water had dried up, and there was nothing but the dried-up poison papers left, and I saw that they were...
Poison?
What? The poison papers were all dried up.
Excuse me.
Did I say something?
Stay here. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Peters was in Basil Pearson's office in 2 jumps. Basil Pearson was the famous Home Office pathologist. He died last year. This was 40 years ago, remember. Peters had a question to ask.
Sorry to burst in on you like this, Basil.
What's chasing you?
Look here. You're familiar with the symptoms of this epidemic diarrhea, aren't you?
Of course. Afraid you've got it, old boy?
Oh, of course not. What I'd like you to answer me is, are the symptoms anything like the symptoms of arsenic poisoning? Arsenic's what's in flypaper, isn't it?
Yes, of course. Yes, under certain circumstances. If a person was suffering from this epidemic thing, the presence of arsenic might not be suspected. The patient's dead, of course.
And buried.
No, unless arsenical poisoning was suspected, there's enough similarity to warrant certifying that death was caused by the epidemic thing.
Good. Now, is there enough arsenic in flypaper to cause death?
Under certain circumstances.
You can identify arsenic in a dead body, too, can't you?
The body's not been dead too long. In lethal quantities, you mean?
Yes.
Well, it's not generally too difficult.
How much is a lethal quantity?
5 grains or upwards. You planning on murdering someone? I shouldn't recommend arsenic.
How long after death can you find arsenic in a body, Basil?
In good time, I should say. How long is this one?
About 2 weeks, I think.
That's not long at all. Why, post-mortem for me? I'd rather hope to get away for a holiday tomorrow.
Well, it won't take you long to do a PM, Basil. Come on, old boy.
Well, got the papers.
I'll have them for you by tomorrow.
All right. Where is it?
Islington.
That dreary place.
Islington Cemetery, to be quite honest.
Well, thank heavens arsenic acts as a preservative.
I'll give you a hand.
Just get me the papers, old boy. Shan't even pack a kit bag until I see the papers, you know. Oh, by the by, is it a he or a she?
She. I'll go and see if I can get George Redmond to give me the papers at once. Thanks ever so much.
Don't fret too much if he won't let you have them at once, Oliver.
What?
Well, she can't get away.
There's a small mortuary near Holloway Prison, which is not far away from Islington Cemetery. There's a laboratory there, too, not a very complete one, but Basil Pearson said it would be satisfactory. They found the arsenic.
Offhand, I'd say the body contains a fatal quantity of arsenic.
Good.
I think so, I said, remember. I had to take these samples of tissue and whatnot and check them quantitatively first, but I think so.
But arsenic is present.
She's soaked in it.
How about whatever it was she was supposed to have died of?
It doesn't look like it from the inside here. It might have looked that way in an ordinary examination. Obviously arsenical poisoning. Now that we know the arsenic's here.
Inspector Peters went back to see Mr. Simons, the businessman. Mr. Simons didn't seem to be very excited, and that rather puzzled Inspector Peters. But he tried not to be obvious about it. What's so hilarious? May I ask?
Oh, you look funny.
Oh, do I?
Have you been outwitted by a clever criminal, Inspector?
I don't think I have, no.
Well, pardon me for laughing. But you did look funny. What can I do for you, Inspector?
Are you agreeable to answering a few questions, Mr. Simons?
Oh, you're a very inquisitive man.
I am.
Well, I'll give you the same answer I gave you before. I'll answer such questions as I think are proper.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Very well.
Well, begin, Inspector.
Very well.
Oh, stop saying very well and ask it questions.
Very well. Where did the arsenic come from that was found in Miss Hoggs' body?
What arsenic?
You didn't know that a large quantity of arsenic was found in her body?
No, I didn't.
It was.
How did it get there?
I doubt it was an accident, Mr. Simons.
Well, how could it get there? Arsenic.
Arsenic.
I don't believe it.
I can assure you it's there. That's what killed her.
Where could she have got arsenic?
I wonder, too.
I don't know.
Where can one buy arsenic?
At a chemist's shop, I fancy.
Not without a poison certificate.
Are they certain it's arsenic?
Basil Pearson says so.
I've heard of him, haven't I?
Nearly everyone in England has.
He's, what do you call him?
He's Home Office pathologist.
Knows all about poison.
Yes.
If he says there's poison in her body, he's pretty certain to be right.
If he says so, there's no question about it.
And he says so.
Yes.
He says there was enough poison in Miss Hoggs' body to kill her.
Yes.
Huh.
Has Miss Hoggs' sick room been cleaned yet, Mr. Simons?
Eh? Oh, I'm sorry to say it hasn't. It has been fumigated, though.
Otherwise, nothing's been changed.
Oh, no. I was going to sell the bedstead and the mattress.
You are a businessman.
Yes, that's right.
Have you any objections to taking me there?
To the sick room? Yes, of course.
Why?
Why, the germs. The microbes. She died there.
She died of arsenical poisoning.
Oh, that's right. So you said.
Will you take me to a room?
Well, if you insist.
I'm afraid I do insist, Mr. Simons.
Well, I'm not at all sure I want to go in that room, Inspector.
Why not?
Well...
Are you afraid to look at the flypaper, Mr. Simons?
Flypaper?
The flypaper that the room is full of. The flypaper that contains arsenic. The flypaper that can be bought at any shop without a poison certificate, Mr. Simons.
Flypaper. That's it, flypaper. That's what it was.
That's right.
Why, I bought that flypaper myself. Poor Miss Hoggs, she was so uncomfortable with all the heat, and the flies. There was something awful. Poor woman, she was suffering so.
I've no doubt.
And she said to me the very day before she died, she said to me, go and fetch me some packets of that black flypaper. You soak in water and the flies drink it and they die. She begged me.
Poison.
I know it's poison.
Arsenic.
Arsenic. And she gave me the money. She gave me sixpence, I remember. And when I got to the chemist's shop, they had only one threepenny packet of the stuff, and I bought that and brought it home.
I hope you remembered to give her the change, Mr. Simons.
Eh? By Jove.
It's too late now. You put the poison flypaper out then?
Yes, of course. Do you think I have no bowels of compassion at all? There were 6 sheets of the stuff, and I could find only 4 saucers or things for containers, though.
You still have the other 2 sheets here in the house?
Of course. Waste not.
Want not. Quite right, Mr. Simons. Quite right. Now, how do you suppose the arsenic got from the flypaper into Miss Hoggs' body?
Why, it was very hot.
Yes.
And Miss Hogg drank a great deal of water.
Yes. Go on, Mr. Simons.
Well, could she have drunk off the poison water in the saucers?
All of it?
Well, if there's arsenic in her body...
There is.
Well, then.
Mr. Simons, I must detain you on suspicion of having caused the death of Winifred Hogg.
Oh, no. You can't.
And I warn you that anything you say will be taken down in writing and may be used as evidence. But when Inspector Peters brought the remains of the threepenny packet of arsenical flypapers to Basil Pearson, Pearson shook his head.
No good, Oliver.
What's no good? The man practically confessed.
No good, Oliver.
Wasn't it arsenic after all?
Oh, of course it's arsenic, no question. That's what killed her.
Basil, I don't understand you. You say...
I say it wasn't the arsenic from these flypapers. Look here at the envelope that came in.
Yes?
The label. Read it. Down here, that fine print.
I see.
Did you read it?
Arsenical content, 0.3 of a grain per sheet.
That's right. 6 sheets. 6 times 0.3. 1 8/10 grains. A whole packet will kill flies, perhaps, but a human being. Do you know how much arsenic the standard Marsh test indicates was in her body?
No.
More than 7 grains. 4 times as much as the whole packet of these papers contains.
You couldn't be wrong.
Did you ever know me to be wrong?
I don't think anyone ever knew Basil Pearson to be wrong. His death last year left a great void in the world of Scotland Yard, at least. He was as nearly indispensable as any man has ever been. It looked for a while as if Inspector Oliver Peters had dropped a most frightful brick that might do him irreparable harm in the CID. He had committed an unpardonable sin. He had jumped too quickly. Simons had gambled cleverly, knowing that the story of the flypapers would certainly be disproved in open court. He hoped clearing him completely. But he gambled too confidently. Before the preliminary hearing, I accompanied Oliver Peters to Simons' house in Tollington Park. I well remember what we found. There was nothing of any importance in the sick room where Miss Hogg had died, but in a dustbin in the cellar. I can still hear Oliver Peters' voice when he found them.
John, look here. Look what I found.
So I hurried to see. They looked like wrinkled sheets of blotting paper to me, but when Basil Pearson saw them...
You're right, Oliver. 27, 28, 29. 30 sheets of the same kind of flypapers.
See the name stamped on them. They're the same kind, all right.
Each one of them contained how much? Let's see the label from the other packet. Let's see it, Oliver.
Arsenical content, 0.3 of a grain per sheet.
And when all 30 of these sheets have been soaked clean, 30 times 0.3, 90/10, 9 full grains.
Enough to kill an elephant, Basil.
Well, enough to have killed a hog, at least, oh boy. This'll hang him.
And so it did. The jury at Simon's trial at Old Bailey believed he'd made the concoction of 30 sheets of flypaper and fed it to Miss Hogg, and so they sentenced him to hang. Oh, and by the way, these are the same sheets of flypaper I showed you when we started to talk. I must put them back in the file. They've done their part. Good afternoon.
Heard today on Whitehall 1212 in the order of their appearance were Harvey Hayes, Lester Fletcher, Winston Ross, Horace Braham, and Carl Harvard. Lionel Rico speaking. Whitehall 1212 is written and directed by Willis Cooper. Forest rangers do a good job in protecting the woodlands of our nation. But even if we had many times the present number of forest rangers, they couldn't prevent all of the fires that threaten our forests. Anytime you're out in the fields and the woods, you should be your own forest ranger. Crush out cigarette, cigar, and pipe ashes. Break matches in two after using them. Drown all campfires. Always follow these simple rules yourself and insist that others follow them too. Remember, it's up to all of us to protect our forests against fire. So don't be careless for a moment. Remember, the risk is far too great. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
We hold these truths.
This is a program about the making of a promise and the keeping of a promise. This is a program about the rights of people. This is a program coming to you over the combined radio networks of the United States, bringing you the voices of Americans, bringing you the voice of the President of the United States. This is a program for listeners in all zones of continental time, for listeners on ships away from home, for listeners in uniform, for listeners on the American islands, in the two great oceans. This is a program about the guarantee made to the people of America 150 years ago. A guarantee that has been kept through peace and war and peace and war. A guarantee we call the Bill of Rights.
My name is Barrymore. I am one of several actors gathered in the studio in California near shores that face an enemy across an ocean now Pacific in name only. We are here tonight to join 130 million fellow Americans in praise of a document that men have fought for, that men are fighting for, that men will keep on fighting for as long as freedom is a strong word falling sweet upon the ear. What we enact here tonight has been enacted many times before in living flesh and blood. The people we portray have walked the world. The drama is an ancient one, the endless one, the struggle for men's rights to live their lives out peacefully and profitably in a decent world. It may be many of us people here are known to many of you people there, for with us, honored to have a part in this program of commemoration, are some whose names you may have heard. Such names as Edward Arnold, Walter Brennan, Bob Burns, Norman Corwin, Bernard Herrmann, Walter Houston, Marjorie Main, Edward G. Robinson, Corporal James Stewart, loaned to us for this occasion by the Army Air Corps, Rudy Valley, and Orson Welles. In New York City, waiting to join us is Dr. Leopold Stokowski and the Symphony Orchestra.